Martin Luther King Day, because it is, as of right now, Martin Luther King Day in the States, January 19th. A few different, Masonic lodges have posted about Martin Luther King Day. But I want to. There we go. We're good. We got the audio working. I always have to do a quick check on that to make sure audio is good. We're now going to go public. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Thank you all for being here. Let's give it a few moments. Please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button. Interesting enough, there are some interesting connections between Freemasonry and Martin Luther King, including the fact that his father and grandfather were both Freemasons. And I've said this before, I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this. I need to double check, but I could have swore I read somewhere that his father-in-law was also a Freemason, Prince Hall Freemasons. So, and by the way, reminder, top of the hour, January 21st, 2 p.m. It is going to be a 24-hour content marathon. I was calling it a content live stream, but that's not completely accurate because it's not going to be a single live stream for the entire 24 hours. It's going to be a combination of live streams, written content, written work. This is going to be producing a ton of different content during that 24-hour period on a ton of different streams, a ton of different venues, a ton of different everything. And I will be regularly posting on social media where you can find me, where I'll be hanging out, where I'll be chatting, where I'll be producing content. But January 21st, it's going to start here though. January 21st, 2 p.m. Eastern, it's going to start here, and then it's going to go from here to, like I said, a variety of different sites, venues, etc., etc. Martin Luther King, I don't believe he was CIA. I know, when you say know about William Morgan, got to be a little bit more specific. A little bit more specific than that. Know about him in what way? And for now, let's give it a bit of time. Let's wait to see who joins. Please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe button. Mark on your calendars, January 21st. And let's wait to see who joins. Please take a moment, hit the like and subscribe button. Depends who you ask. It's complicated. The popular theory, I'm not even going to call it a conspiracy theory because it's very possible, is that the Freemasons killed him for, I think, threatening to or writing a book, quote unquote, exposing Masonic secrets. But you need to keep in mind he was also massively in debt. In fact, he escaped from a debtor's prison. So it's possible he was caught by people to whom he owed money. Although that's more questionable because if somebody owes you money and you kill them, they can't pay you back. Or he escaped to Canada because he was last seen on a river, if I recall correctly, on New York. Or a river in New York, if I recall correctly. Some body of water, anyways. Well, his writings did not expose our satanic practices because we have no satanic practices. I don't know if we ever actually... I'm trying to think, if anybody actually ever read what he wrote. But I forget if he actually even published a book. Anyways, there are no satanic practices within Freemasonry, so there's nothing to quote unquote expose. Well, if I'm in denial, then so be it. Please don't forget, hit that like and subscribe button. Welcome, and please mark on your calendar January 21st, 2 p.m. Eastern. We are going to be having a 24-hour content marathon. So it'll be a lot of fun. Amongst other things, we're going to be talking about, a few different topics, but one of the big things we're going to be talking about is ways to grow our Masonic lodges and grow Freemasonry and Masonic history. We do celebrate, celebrate's a good word for it, acknowledge, appreciate geometry. Um, the beauty of the universe as expressed through order and symmetry. Welcome, yours truly, Todd. I hope you're doing well. Well, Josh, you're going to have to come down a little bit. I don't mind you being here. But you can't keep saying the same thing over and over again. It makes things uninteresting. Let's give it a bit more time. Well, the difference is, I would say most religions don't actually emphasize geometry. Having said that, Freemasonry is not a religion of any sort. Keep that in mind. But I would say that's not the case. In my experience, most, like, religions are very different for a variety of reasons than Freemasonry. Primarily, or one of the main ones, being that Freemasonry does not promise salvation, nor does it threaten damnation. Also, Freemasonry allows individual interpretation of what it means to be a Freemason. Whereas with the church or religion, there's a single prescribed interpretation coming from a priest, an imam, a rabbi, whatever it might be. I breathe a lot. Shake and mean. Please hit like and subscribe. Well, there's geometry in life. Geometry is, you could argue, the underpinning, the undergirding of what it means to be human, of what it means to be alive, of the universe. There's a reason why NASA and the European Space Agency, in its most recent, not most recent, but in one of its recent satellite launches, right, called their satellite Euclid, because geometry is a very important and very valuable way to not simply understand, how to make a triangle, but how to actually understand the universe. It's fascinating. Yours truly, Todd. Don't worry about Josh. Josh has his own beliefs. He's probably living not a great life. Usually, in my experience, people who are on the stream talking this stuff are usually living not the greatest of lives. And in order to deal with that, very often, a way they will do that is they'll find conspiracies, whatever it might be, and focus on those. I've used the term before. Codependent relationship. You can absolutely have a codependent relationship when it comes to conspiracy theories as well as anything else. At least I have legs and a job. Well, that is true. I don't have legs. I consider this to be a job, but what can I say? I don't need legs. If I had legs, I'd be too perfect. Sometimes what I have found in life is if you're almost perfect, the supreme being or God, or pick your term, will take something away because it wouldn't be fair. I wouldn't be able to leave any women for the rest of you. I am a Freemason. I have been a Freemason since 2007, so 20 years. The purpose of this channel is to promote the ways Freemasonry was and is relevant to the communities in which it's located, as well as stories of Masonic interest. More than anything else, though, it's about turning my passion for Freemasonry into a profession. So please take a moment to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and consider a super chat. Just 99 cents would be very helpful. I don't know what nerfing me means, but thank you, Mr. Keeps. By the way, I sent something to you. You should be getting it soon. I got my item in from Europe to send to you. Although it was, I couldn't get a big enough envelope, and I wanted to get it sent before the mail arrived. So it might be a little bit folded, but it's okay. It's still good. It's still good. My head looks like this because I was nerfed. Nerfing means weaker. Yes, that's exactly what it was. I was nerfed in beta testing. by the supreme being slash God slash pick your term. We'll say God for Mr. Keeps. So Mr. Keeps, you should be getting that probably, I don't know, sent it yesterday, so should be getting it in a couple of days. Let me know. All right, Josh, I have to put you in a little bit of a timeout for a second. You need to calm down a little bit here. What is the core belief in Freemasonry? So Sully85, that's a good question because yes, the Scotland thing, because every Freemason will have his own core belief, right? That's one of the reasons why Freemasonry is not a religion, right? Within, for example, the Catholic faith, the Christian faith, the Muslim faith, the Jewish faith, there is some type of core belief. Like with Christianity, I would assume, I don't want to speak for Christians, so forgive me if I get this wrong, but as I best describe it, right, the core belief is the belief that Jesus was both the Son of God and God himself, came down to earth to carry the burden of our sins. That would be the belief I'm most familiar with. But Freemasonry, because it's not a religion, there is no single core belief. For me, the core belief of Freemasonry is the belief that the world can be made better through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. I would say, okay, Suli. So again, I'm not necessarily sure I've known a lot of Muslims, had some Muslim friends, some Muslim Masonic brethren, all great people. I don't necessarily know if I could describe what the quote unquote core tenet or belief is within the Muslim faith. I don't know if you could let me know. The closest I could, um, you know, but there is no single core belief within Freemasonry, is I guess my point, right? It's not a religion in that sense. I mean, you could argue based on the old constitutions, a core belief within Freemasonry is that men who would be at a perpetual distance are brought together. That's from the Anderson constitutions, right? That's why Freemasonry does not discriminate, and we have members who are Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Sikh, whatever it might be, and from not just different religions, but different nations, different mother tongues, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I would say Mr. Keeps pray for everybody right now. It's kind of a scary time a little bit, so I hope that we will keep everybody in our thoughts. But I would say for me, Suli85, I hope I pronounced that correctly. The core belief of Freemasonry is the belief that the world can be made better through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Or another possible belief would be that men who would be at a perpetual distance be brought together and no longer be strangers. And that's from the Anderson Constitution, which again is one of my favorite, one of my favorite actually just written passages in the history of written passages is the passage in the Anderson Constitution titled Concerning God and Religion, which I think is one of the greatest statements ever put to paper. I guess when put to parchment at the time, promoting religious tolerance. I'm African and also live in Australia. Well, some Masons will say that, Suli, but it's not. They're fooling themselves. Right? Freemasonry doesn't have any ancient knowledge, right? Freemasonry started in 1717. Well, a little bit earlier, but for our purposes, it started in 1717, June 24th. That's the premier Grand Lodge of England formed. When Freemasonry was developing its rituals and ceremonies and whatever else, it was developing its protocols, if you want to use that term. It borrowed, stole, adapted, pick your term, symbols and ideas from a variety of different sources, including ancient Egypt. It borrowed a lot from Egyptian mysticism and Egyptian mysticism schools, as well as Egyptian stonemasons of the time. It also bore, though, from Stoic philosophy, from architecture, Christianity, Judaism. It bore from Islam, even bore from Chinese mythology. And it kind of put them all together in the development educational programs. It kind of took all these things, added them to stone Masonic guild symbolism, and kind of mixed it all together to form the rituals and ceremonies that presently make up Freemasonry. So it's not as though it was taken out and kept hidden by Masons for centuries. Rather, when Freemasonry formed, it looked back at the knowledge of ancient Egypt, which was available to everybody. It wasn't a hidden secret. And they just adapted it. Part of it, too, was Egypt was hugely popular around those times, right? If you look at most Masonic buildings, they will have these Egyptian rooms where it's a lodge room. It's a regular lodge room, but it is decorated with Egyptian symbols and symbolism and hieroglyphics and all that type of stuff. So, I mean, most religions do tend to devolve or evolve, pick your term, into various sects. So do most groups, most political groups, most organizations. It's very common for either the evolution or devolution, depending on how you view it, of groups and organizations into various sects. It's more brotherhood. So it's more of a brotherhood, Suli. The idea of looking for outcomes in the world. Certainly I think within Freemasonry, there are natural outcomes that evolve from being active within Freemasonry. I do like there's value to doing both, Dad, but I think I'll stick to this type more often than not. It's kind of like if Freemasonry grows, then I think outcomes will naturally evolve from that. The world will become more tolerant, more respectful. The world becomes better in a lot of ways. You have more charity. You have more tolerance for others. Maybe you get a little bit more peace in the world. Who knows? But that's not the purpose of Freemasonry. That's just a natural outcome of Freemasonry. Freemasonry, the purpose really is just to enjoy one another's company, right? It started and formed as a social club attached to a trade union as a profession and just grew from there. By the way, according to my stream right now, I've got 1 like, so please hit the like button if you haven't done so yet. What do I think of Albert Pike? Oh, that's the question. Less and less a fan of him every stream because somebody always asks about him. He was one Mason. I didn't realize he was actually born in Boston. I always thought he was from the South, but he moved to Nebraska, if I recall correctly. Wrote Morals and Dogma. Yes, the Pike Curse. He said some things that I think are valuable. He said a lot of things that are not valuable. But the biggest thing to keep in mind about Albert Pike is he was one dude writing about Freemasonry from the perspective of the Scottish Rite Southern Masonic jurisdiction. He was Luciferian, but the key is he was Luciferian. He wrote about it as though Freemasonry is Luciferian, which it's not, right? It would be no different than if, somebody was, let's say, a Christian and wrote that, because all of us serve Jesus Christ, Freemasonry serves Jesus Christ, right? It wouldn't be right because there are many different faiths within Freemasonry. He was one dude who decided that his ideas or his beliefs reflected the whole of Freemasonry, which you have to be really careful that you don't fall into that trap, because that's why I'm always very careful to say, there's always a disclaimer on my videos. When I'm speaking, it's exclusively for myself. It does not reflect Freemasonry as a whole. He was, well, that's the famous Mr. Keeps. There's this section in the book where he talks about, right, Freemasonry serves Lucifer. He didn't mean Lucifer as in Satan. He meant Lucifer as in the snake in the garden, which to Luciferians are not the same creature, not the same being. And And because it brought, knowledge to humans, and Freemasonry relies upon knowledge, or masonry, stonemasonry relies upon knowledge to build its temples and build houses and build walls, became a whole thing. But the problem is, again, he's one person who is speaking for himself philosophically. He does not speak for Freemasonry. In the same way, I don't speak for Freemasonry. I can only give you my experience, my opinion, based upon my 20 years of experience. Well, he was a lot of different things. He was a fundamentalist Christian, but he was also a Luciferian and a spiritualist. Let's just say his views were quite complicated. Let's put it that way. Right? Because what's so fascinating about him is how do I put it? He viewed Lucifer almost as necessary, if that's the way to describe it, right? Like as a necessary, like you have light and you have darkness, you have good and you have bad. And Albert Pike was, viewed Lucifer maybe not as good per se, but as a necessary being, right? If that makes sense. Right. He also, because he said, let me just get the actual quote. I'm trying to find the exact quote. Here it is. Oops. Nope. Well, he had his Christianity too. Like he was, to my knowledge, if I recall correctly, active in. Darn it, I'm trying to find the exact quote now. Here it is. Control F. Dun, dun, dun. Lucifer, the light bearer, a strange and mysterious name given to the spirit of darkness, Lucifer, son of the morning star, son of the morning. It is he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls. Doubt it not, for traditions are full of divine revelations and inspirations, and inspiration is not of one age or creed. So he basically, the way I've always understood it, and again I can't go back and ask him, is he viewed Lucifer the snake in the garden as different from Satan the fallen angel. He had a lot of different beliefs, but the point is he was not speaking for Freemasonry. He was speaking for himself and his own views. There's also some evidence that he tended to view the light of Lucifer as being blinding to the truth, right? It was not that what he was sharing was quote unquote the truth, but it was something that blinded men from the truth. Either way, it gets complicated. The point is, he was one dude speaking for himself. He was not speaking for all of Freemasonry. There should be. maybe. Why does it feel like you beat around the bushes? Well, because there is no core tenet of Masonic beliefs, Suli. I mean, brotherly love, relief, and truth to make good men better. Because again, that's one of the differences, right? When you say the core tenets of, within the Muslim faith, there is a Quran. Um, the issue with that is within Freemasonry, every individual Mason gets to have his own beliefs on Freemasonry, right? Like it's asking what are the beliefs of Freemasonry is like asking what are the beliefs of football players on a football team. Every player will have his own beliefs. It's not a religion. Or what are the beliefs of people in your knitting club? Or what are the beliefs of people in your cooking club? Or what are the beliefs of the guys who get together on a Friday night and all hang out at the bar? It's not a religion with a single set of beliefs. Rather it is everybody is free to develop their own beliefs. That's why within Freemasonry, everybody will have his or her own version of a supreme being and what the supreme being is. Right. And so again, when you say I can tell you what my beliefs are, which is, Freemasonry is the belief that the world can be made better through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. So yeah, but again, would you ask what are the core beliefs of a football player? Would you ask what are the core, or a football team? Would you ask what are the core beliefs of I don't know, of a soccer team, of a knitting club, of a book club, of a group of guys getting together to go out on a Friday night, right? It's something you do or something you're a part of. It's not based on a belief system. Right. And so again, just going back to Lucifer, I've seen different things. I would consider Albert Pike a Luciferian. Now, maybe not literally, but there is no author of Freemasonry. Freemasonry developed from many different authors over centuries. There is no singular author of Freemasonry, right? Because again, for him, there was a difference between Lucifer in the Bible as being there's Satan, which is the fallen angel, and then there's the serpent in the garden. And Albert Pike considered them to be different individuals, different people. He didn't worship the snake per se. But he did view it as kind of a light bringer in the sense of almost like a Prometheus figure. So I think whether he's precisely that or not, people debate. I would consider him to be that, though. Again, based on that section, Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name given the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning, it is he who bears the light. And with its splendors, intolerable, blinds, feeble, and sensual or selfish souls. Doubt it not, for traditions are full of divine revelations and inspirations. Pike is using Lucifer in its original Latin meaning light bearer, a classical mythological reference to the planet Venus, morning star, not as the Christian devil. He is philosophizing about comparative religion, symbolism, and how light knowledge can blind the enlightened, depending on the soul receiving it. He was a 19th century esoteric scholar who drew from many traditions, but remained a Christian throughout his life. So, I would consider him a Luciferian. I'm doing well, Spoon. Thank you for being here. Well, what's interesting is, again, I think we're kind of getting off, or I'm getting off topic here. The point is, Albert Pike is one individual. He's one guy. He doesn't speak for Freemasonry, right? Any more than I do. Canada's not broke. Canada's doing pretty great. I love Canada. But I mean, there is fascinating stuff. Like I've had to read into this a little bit, just because I keep getting the questions about Albert Pike. Apparently, um, and it's cool. The original book of, I guess it'd be Genesis, when the serpent first makes its appearance, it actually does not refer to him ever as the devil or as the fallen angel. I guess the argument is, I saw this from like Alex O'Connor, that actually his being attributed as the devil or Satan came, I guess, later. If that's true or not, I'm not a theological expert by any means. Yes, I got a big forehead. Miles, please hit like and subscribe. I mean, I never met anybody who followed Albert Pike, who said, like, Albert Pike is someone I follow. Um, I've, heard Albert Pike discussed in Lodge, and certainly within Scottish Rite. The Canadian, what's the word I'm looking for? The Canadian Scottish Rite is primarily modeled after the Southern Scottish Rite Masonic jurisdiction. So, his famous quote, what we do for us dies with us, what we do for others lives eternity. I'm getting that kind of wrong. But he's had some famous quotes that have made their way into Scottish Rite, but that's an independent body of Freemasonry. That's not Freemasonry itself. Um, Well, thank you, Miles, for liking and subscribing. According to the Jewish lore, the serpent used to have arms and legs. Really, I did not know that. Anyways, again, that is why I've always considered, and I still consider, again, Albert Pike to be Luciferian. Others will disagree. He certainly was Christian as well, in that he knew, Christianity. But in my opinion, he viewed Lucifer and the devil as separate beings, and he viewed Lucifer or the serpent in the garden as being a Prometheus type of light figure. Having said that, he was pretty active. To my knowledge, he went to church his whole life. Um, right? And then he also did view a um, a what's the word I'm looking for? A necessary, not even evil per se, although I suppose you'd say with the devil, a necessary, like you need the light and you need the darkness, you need the good and you need the bad. And in some ways, what Lucifer did is he demonstrated both the good and the bad, the light and the knowledge, by giving, Adam and Eve, he gave them the knowledge of good and evil, and that was necessary for human growth. So I guess there you go. Well, I have no idea. I did not know that the serpent used to have arms and legs, Mr. Keeps. I mean, that's pretty cool. I could have given those legs to me. Wasn't Freemasonry white? So I can't speak to the Mormon Church, Suli, whether it was whites exclusively. Freemasonry, this is complicated. Freemasonry was never, in its core, fundamentally racist. And if you're following its tenets, should have welcomed men of all different faiths and religions and races and ethnicities and backgrounds. However, human beings are human beings. As a consequence of that, it cannot be helped that I'm trying to think of what the word is. the prejudices, the racisms, the prejudices of society are going to be a part of Freemasonry. Whatever is predominant in society is going to make its way into Freemasonry. We can try to fight against it, but it's not always possible. So there were examples of men being denied acceptance into Freemasonry because of their race. I'm sure it also happened because of their religion at times. The most famous example of that being Prince Hall, who was denied admission into a Boston Masonic Lodge. As a consequence of that, he ended up joining a Masonic Lodge out of Ireland, or chartered out of Ireland in Boston. It was a military encampment, an Irish military encampment, where he joined the Masonic Lodge therein, and eventually started his own Masonic order known as Prince Hall, chartered out of England, which welcomed men of all different races and, which welcomed black men, because Prince Hall recognized if he was denied admission into Freemasonry because of his race, other black men may have been denied as well. So it was a Masonic body specifically for African Americans or black men, spread all over the world. It's a great part of our order. In 2026, I'm proud to say, at least in my experiences, I've sat in lodge with men of all different races, ethnicities, backgrounds, without issue, which is as it should be. Because again, there's the Freemasonry as it should be practiced, and there's Freemasonry actually being practiced, and those are different things. How much time? I've not spent a lot of time researching Mormons, Sarding, but again, from my understanding, they are, it's a religion. Obviously, it was founded by someone who's a Freemason. They are welcome to consider themselves Freemason. Like, if a Mormon wanted to join Freemasonry, I'd have no issue with it. Mopor, that's good advice. What creature are you, subhuman? I may be subhuman. Please hit like and subscribe. He's a member of Prince Hall. He was actually made a Mason on site, but to his credit, he was very active as being he seems to be promoting Freemasonry quite a bit. There's a picture of him with a Masonic ring, at the camera. Supposedly he talks about Freemasonry a fair bit, at least to my knowledge. So good for him. He's doing a great job. And I especially appreciate the fact that he was made a Mason on site and still promoting it. I think sometimes when you are made a Mason on site, you can feel as though, I don't even know what the right word is. You can feel as though it's not like, you don't appreciate it as much as if you've gone through the application process and got the degrees, but he seems to be really dedicated to it. And other famous Masons on site, Taft, president, and maybe Joe Biden, depending who you ask. Well, Wizzy Wazzle, first of all, Illuminati really isn't a thing anymore. Second, if you're a Freemason, okay, I'd have a few questions for you. Whether you approve of the live or not, I would still do it, but I do appreciate the approval. Why do I look so scary? Because you haven't hit the like and subscribe button yet. If you hit that like and subscribe button, I would look a lot less scary. So keep that in mind. Once again, Priscilla, thank you for being here. Well, Wizzy Wazzle, that'll be a thing. Upcoming events in 2026, there's a bunch of events. The biggest events I can think of is there is a Grand Masters Conference in Illinois. There is a emulation workshop in Rio de Janeiro. There is a annual communication, ANCOM 2026 in Tagaytay in the Philippines, which will be crazy to see. Sorry, linking. I don't get every question. I do my best. I try to get every question, but I don't always see them all. So let me know what your question is. I'll do my best to answer it. In 20 minutes, I'm going to start talking about today's subject, Martin Luther King. It is MLK Day in the States, and there's a few interesting connections there with Freemasonry. So Adam and Eve, reality or made up? Well, I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in maybe a literal interpretation of the Bible, though I think it's probably got, well, I know it has a ton of very valuable insights and information. And I guess insights is the term I'd use into human nature based on what I've read from it thus far. But I don't believe there were literally two human beings that started everything. I, believe in evolution. So you had, I think, multiple hominids evolving kind of parallel to one another over centuries. Yes, Kevin, I got a big head. Please hit that like and subscribe button. In about 20 more minutes, we're going to start with we're going to start talking about Martin Luther King Day. Well, I'm so used to people making fun of how I look on this stream, I've had to just grow used to it. Um, yes, please respect the live stream. Please hit that like and subscribe button. I'm one subscriber away from 3,310 subs. And if you know how it works, it goes up by tens on the public part. So hit that like and subscribe button. So how's humanity started? I mean, evolution, right? So I believe in evolution. Again, this is me speaking for myself, not speaking for anyone else, but not even speaking for any of the Masons. But I think you had now how life started. I have no idea. That's a separate question altogether. That might be more in the realm of religion, for all I know, how life from an amoeba started. But I think from there over millions of years, hundreds of millions of years, you had life randomly mutate or form random mutations. Some of those random mutations were more conducive to, or were fit is the term, were more fit for their environment. And as a consequence, those mutations continued to evolve and reproduce. And the ones that were not fit for the environment started to pass away, and then eventually you got all sorts of different variation within species. Now, the bigger question is, how did life begin? Not how did humans begin, but how did life, those first single-celled organisms? I don't know if anybody knows for sure yet. That's a fascinating question as well. Well, because not every mutation is going to be beneficial, right? We, in some ways, and I'm grateful for this, humanity has, reached a point technologically and socially where we are able to, artificially move ourselves past survival of the fittest. Make no mistake, if I was born 5,000 years ago, I would not be able to survive. Certainly not 5 million years ago, back when we were, 3 million years ago when we were hominids. I would not be fit to survive. And so the likelihood is I would just stop here. But I'm lucky in that I was born in 1983. I'm lucky in that I was born at a time when technology and society has, not biologically, but socially and technologically evolved sufficiently to allow me to live. And not only to live, but to live a great life. Right? For most of human history, I would not have survived. At best, or even for, another part of human history, I may have survived, but I would have been stuck in some home somewhere, like some assisted living facility, just whiling out my days. Well, I don't have children right now. I have a cat. That should count for something. Well, I definitely don't agree with that, silence and violence. Because there's a difference between biological evolution and social or group evolution, right? So biological evolution is, so different groups can definitely, different groups have different pressures. And as a consequence of those pressures, they will evolve different dynamics to deal with them. So, for example, if you happen to live in an area where your food source is constantly on the move, let's say you're hunting, your primary source of food is through hunting animals, and those animals are constantly moving, you will evolve a society that has to move with them. You're not going to be that interested in developing permanent homes if every few weeks you have to travel to a new location to get food. So your society will evolve in such a way as to prioritize movement, to prioritize the ability to travel, to be light on one's feet. Whereas if you are, let's say, farmers or farming, and you have a steady supply of food in one location, your society is going to evolve in such a way, that's going to promote permanence. But both are necessary, right? Both are valuable. Both are a response and an adaptation to the environment in which you find yourself. That's what human beings are incredibly good at. We're adaptable, right? We will adapt ourselves and our cultures and our systems to whatever makes the most sense within the environment we find ourselves. Um, Oh, Daryl, I think that's 100% possible. I mean, I definitely think we're reaching a point where our evolution is being less and less determined biologically and more determined by media, culture, technology, whatever it might be, right? Because again, there's the way an individual or there's the way a species evolves biologically, but there's also the way a species evolves socially within groups. What are the group dynamics at play? And then for humans, there's the way a system evolves politically, there's the way a system evolves technologically, there's the way a system evolves economically, there's the way a system evolves socially, and all of that stuff is being influenced by the media without question. So, yeah, I mean, even the algorithm, right? Which is fascinating when I say the algorithm, right? I'm here talking on YouTube. A part of me is always thinking about what can I say that works for the algorithm that will get me more views? What can I say that works against the algorithm? And you even see it now, like people are speaking not just on YouTube, but on their day-to-day life. They're taking terms that you use in the YouTube algorithm and they're applying them in their day-to-day life. Like, for example, because content that describes violence or violent acts can be pushed down in the YouTube algorithm, a lot of times people will use the term unalive. They unalived somebody instead of using even me, I'm doing it right now, right? I'm not going to use the other term because that could affect the channel. So they'll say unalived. A few months ago, I heard someone, use the term unalive just in casual conversation. No cameras on, no YouTube on. So that's an example of social factors putting pressures and affecting the way speech and language is evolving. It's fascinating. Um, well, it's different type of IQ. I mean, a great example of that would be when Europeans made their way to the New World. I believe it was in Canada. They all found themselves suffering from scurvy, and were it not for the indigenous peoples or the First Nations giving them seal meat, they would have died of scurvy, right? So clearly, in that one case, it was in that one moment, it was the indigenous demonstrating their higher IQ because they were adapted and recognized what was necessary based on their experiences in the land. Same thing with, there's a reason why Lewis and Clark was a Freemason, by the way, or Lewis, I think Clark was a Freemason, relied so heavily upon First Nations and indigenous guides. You evolve based on what is necessary when I say evolve, I mean society and groups evolve based on what makes the most sense for the environment, right? Um, but again, both have their value. It's not that I'm never going to believe that one group is smarter than another. I think rather each group evolves and adapts based on what's around them, you know? Um, you would think that Europeans traveling to the New World would be smart enough to recognize scurvy could be a thing and how to solve it, but they weren't. Daryl, again, I'm speaking exclusively for myself, but I don't think anybody can quote unquote become gay through social manipulation. That seems highly doubtful to me, speaking for myself. I mean, because I've never felt manipulated into being attracted to women. I just one day realized I'm attracted to women. It's not as though anybody told me to be or manipulated me to be. I don't know. I cannot imagine what type of manipulation would be necessary to make someone a different sexual orientation than they would be anyways. Um, Unthink they call it. I mean, no, you're not wrong. But what's interesting though, and this has always been, I think, where I'm not a huge fan of 1984. This is probably my hottest take, by the way, by far, um, by a mile. Um, I don't think 1984 is a very good book, and there's a lot of different reasons why. But one of the ways that George Orwell missed the mark is, it was never going to be, if tyranny were to come, it would never be through the government. It would start at the individual level, right? Saying the word unalive because of the YouTube algorithm, that's not the government. That's a corporation. Um, and again, they may be doing it for valid reasons. That's even a corporation. That's people on the stream choosing what they do and do not want to see, and advertisers responding in kind, and then YouTube crafting the algorithm based on that. Um, Political and theological, you're not wrong. It does concern me quite a bit too. I don't want to put anybody on timing or anything like that, because it's definitely not getting to that point. But there is some social Darwinism which I'm not a fan of. Look, the thing I love about Freemasonry, by far, is its tolerance of different religions, different beliefs, different ethnicities, different races. Um, and also, I think that within Freemasonry, there is a recognition that whatever it is, like, everybody has value, and everybody's value. Some people, like, I'm an idiot. I'm not, I'm very stupid, but that doesn't mean I don't have value in other ways, right? Like, there's people have value because they're people, because they're your brothers. Once you start getting into this idea of high IQ, low IQ, Darwinism, that stuff does concern me a little bit. I would say again, though, I do believe there are different types of intelligence. You can call it different types of IQ, different types of intelligence. I don't believe intelligence, in my experience, is understandable within the confines of any single definition. I mean, maybe the best quote is um, maybe the best quote I ever heard about that was from Albert Einstein, who was a pretty smart dude, who said, every animal is intelligent, but if you tell a fish to climb a tree, it will think itself is stupid. Or if you try to teach a fish to climb a tree, the fish will consider itself stupid, right? I do believe everybody has an intelligence for something, for some ability, right? It could be, I do think when it comes to intelligence, I'm very good at talking. I do think I have a high verbal IQ. I'm shit at music. I'm shit at art. I'm shit at math, but I can talk well. Other people I've known, some black, some white, some Asian, whatever, um, They maybe aren't able to talk as well as me, but they're very, very talented at music, at math, at art. Some I've known are very good writers. Some are very conscientious, which is a type of intelligence as well, the ability to think and plan ahead. And then I think, again, in some cases that evolves to different groups have different types of, your culture and your society evolves and adapts based on the environment in which it finds itself. But it doesn't mean any one culture or group is less intelligent than any other culture or group. I think that's a very foolish way to look at it. Um, like where you even on planet Earth? Well, I cannot imagine. And I've known trans people, I've known gay people. I can't imagine, like maybe I'm in my own head. I cannot imagine the type of media pressure that would cause me to be uninterested or not attracted to women, right? And so I tend to apply that just to others, and like I cannot imagine how that would work. It seems to me pretty hardwired. And even this idea of like one's gender, I cannot imagine the type of societal pressures that would cause me to reconsider my gender, right? Um, so I have to assume it's the same with everybody unless you see otherwise. And I guess that's my point, right? I cannot imagine what type of pressures on society would cause me to reconsider A, who I'm attracted to, or B, my own personal identity in myself. Um, well, then don't say it, Daryl. Um, hello, Starboy the Knight. Well, but the point is, um, in a sense, when you look back historically, um, freedom of speech is important, but this is also my stream, right? When you look back historically, I've noticed, so for example, I've seen people say, I don't believe this to be the case, right? Just to make that clear. But I've seen people say, for example, that European culture is or was, in the 1500s, European culture was superior to other cultures because it was building cathedrals. But judging European cultural versus indigenous culture based on which one had cathedrals is like asking a fish to climb a tree. It's stupid. It's a stupid judgment because, the environment of North America in which indigenous people were living, building a cathedral would be stupid. They were constantly, I'm talking about North America specifically, building a cathedral would have been a lack of intelligence. They had to constantly be on the move for their food source, right? So in both cases, the point is, right, culture or environment dictates one's culture, environment dictates one's society. I would not be able to, if you took a group of, in my opinion, if you took a group of Europeans in the 12th century, put them in North America, I don't think they would survive because they would not have the intelligence to survive in North America at the time. It's just a different environment. Environment determines the society in which one operates. Um, we did not fake the moon landing. We did not fake the moon landing. We were at the moon landing. When I say we, Buzz Aldrin was a Freemason, but that's not the same as faking it. In fact, I'm a member of Tranquility Lodge number 2000 and proud of it, which is named after Tranquility Valley, which is where the lunar module landed. Um, Well, I mean, whether they're better or not at individual traits, I'm hesitant to say that silence is violence. What I would say is the biggest danger we can have is, and I think hopefully to agree with this, is we never want to assign any type of um, we never want to make any moral judgments based on any group or anybody's membership within a group, whether it be religious, whether it be ethnic, languages, race, religion, creed, ethnicity, right? So we never want to say one group is morally superior to another or one group is morally inferior to another because of what they believe, because of their ethnicity, who their parents were, their skin color, etc., etc., etc. Right? I think that's the biggest danger, and I think when you get into social Darwinism, I mean, aside from it being very dubious scientifically, I would say very, very dubious. The bigger problem is people tend to start assigning moral judgments to people, and I think that's very dangerous. That's the beautiful thing about Freemasonry, right? What Freemasonry talked about, and this goes back to the Anderson constitutions, and it's something I love, is this was in the section of God and religion, but it applies to everything. Um, is that men who would be at a perpetual distance should come together and no longer be strangers is basically how they term it. I think when we talk about social Darwinism, fast twitch, slow twitch muscles, all that nonsense, all it does is put people at a distance, and they shouldn't be put at a distance, right? We don't want to be separating people or thinking of people in that way. I don't want to be meeting somebody and thinking about the type of muscles that they have. That's silly. I want to meet somebody and get to know them as a person, and potentially in Freemasonry as a brother. Um, what I would say, silence and violence, is everybody can probably, if they train hard enough and work hard enough, be superior at any number of tasks, whether it be running, athletics, education, intelligence, whatever it might be, medicine. Pick your thing, right? Pick your term. Who knows? Silence. Maybe one day. I mean, again, silence and violence. There were plenty of times when, throughout most of human history, right? So I was born missing both of my legs. I also have some other medical conditions. I have Kallman's syndrome as well. I have a few other medical conditions. For most of human history, had I been, had I been born, I'd have been thrown in, a pit or left on the side of the road. And the argument would have been someone with no legs can never, live a healthy, normal life within society. You learn that biology isn't determinative of anything at the end of the day. It's society and the individual's willingness to work within these to it's society and the person's willingness and desire that matters more than biology, more than anything else. Um, do I know what science is? I love science. Donald Glover, 8511. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Rock Nation, yeah, but you didn't buy me dinner. I do this for a living, or at least I try to do this for a living. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Um, I don't know what MOG means, to be honest. I keep hearing that phrase, but I've never heard what the term MOG means. So, um, I guess please don't MOG me, I suppose. Um, wasn't that dude who was singing the Kanye song or something? Isn't he MOG people? Whatever MOG means, leave me alone. Don't mog me, please. Well, there exists, I mean, physical differences between different groups of people, including different races, but even then it gets complicated. What's so fascinating is I remember, like, different people look different, right? DNA, genes, Asian, European, whatever it is. But I remember when I was going to school, university, my undergrad was in, I took anthropology, and one of my first classes was on physical anthropology. They showed us a whole bunch of different pictures of people and then asked us, based on the pictures and the physical appearance, to assign them into different racial groups. And it was amazing how, in some cases, like, we got it incorrect, right? It gets complicated. It's not just surface level, it's biological. Yeah, I mean, I think political and theological study is correct. Do I think European people? Well, I'm going to take. I don't really. Oh, Jester. CR7. Please hit like and subscribe. I am a third degree Master Mason, which is the most important degree in Freemasonry and the highest degree in Freemasonry. I'm also a 18th degree Scottish Rite. So, Donald, I'm going to take your question literally as I can, because it seems like a strange question. I think any people, the extent to which they are happy, has nothing to do with where they are and everything to do with what's happening within them internally. So I was a probation officer. I worked in a jail. Um, and we dealt with a lot of people who had substance use issues. And one of their ideas, or a lot of people were just unhappy. And they would always talk about, I'd just be happier if I lived somewhere else. The problem is I live in Windsor and I know people who, deal drugs here. I have my history here. If I just moved somewhere else, I'd be happier. Um, it never worked. They'd move somewhere else and they'd be just as miserable somewhere else. Because wherever you go, there you are. Right? Wherever you go, there you are. That's the problem. So this idea of, like, you will be, whether you're European living in Europe or European living in North America or living in South America, you will find happiness based on your internal state of mind. It has nothing to do with where you are. It's not geographical, it's personal. Um, that's my opinion on that. Well, yeah, I mean, the brain obviously has evolved, I'm sure, in a variety of ways, but that's not the same thing. I don't believe that the physical brain is all there is to humanity. Now, I tend to be a reductionist in some ways, but I do think we have a mind and internal spirit, some part of us that exists outside of the physical, whatever you call it, outside of the physical apparatus. And I don't think that's necessarily based on evolution. If nothing else, you could take it as a value proposition. And what I'd say is that that internal value exists independent of the physical structures of which we're referring to. None of them, Donald Glover. We don't have kids in Freemasonry. To be a Freemason, you need to be at least 18 years of age. In some places, in other places, 21. Um, it depends on the jurisdiction. I would say in Canada, it's almost always 21. In the States, I feel like it's about 50-50. It's very often 18, sometimes 21. Like 18 in Michigan, for example, to my knowledge. Um, so CR7 King, I'm going to take a moment to take your questions seriously. You need to be really careful, CR7 King, because there's a few reasons. First, There does exist within Freemasonry something called clandestine lodges. Those are lodges that are not legitimate Masonic lodges. They claim to be Masonic, but they're just making stuff up. So if you've never been a Mason before and you know nothing about Freemasonry, um, and you join a clandestine lodge, they could have any number of crazy rituals that are all full of nonsense. But then, you don't like it, you leave, and you start exposing Freemasonry. You've exposed a clandestine lodge, which is nonsense. Um, Also, a lot of times, um, um, it's AI, it's bullshit, it's people making stuff up. It's one of the reasons why I always tell people, just because within Freemason, just because someone has, let's say, a Masonic ring or is wearing a Masonic t-shirt, that doesn't mean they're a Freemason. That doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. Um, well, I definitely don't like the term breeds. That's a pretty concerning term. Um, No, I have no desire to hunt down and smite anybody because A, that seems exhausting, and B, no, I'm not interested in hunting down or smiting anyone. And Freemasonry is not a Jewish concept. To the extent that Freemasonry is anything, Freemasonry is a um, concept based on a trade union, a stonemason guild. So silence and violence. This is something um, that I have to strongly push back on you. And honestly, though, I think silence and violence, I'm happy that you said it because I think it shows to me the fundamental, maybe difference between maybe how you think and how I think, but even more especially Freemasonry and why I love Freemasonry, right? You said above, um, studies show people are happiest when living around people like themselves. I think that those studies might be true, but that also I think is a major indictment on humanity. And if humanity is going to survive and going to evolve and going to make it past the next 100, 200, 300 years, we need to become and learn how to be happy existing and living amongst people who are not like ourselves. That is where humanity will flourish. If we learn to not simply be tolerant of, but to like, respect, and be happy around those who are different than ourselves. Different races, different languages, different ethnicities, different cultures, different beliefs, different ages, different backgrounds, different religions. I truly believe that that is where humanity needs to get if we're going to make it. And I think that Freemasonry recognized this need 300 and some odd years ago. When it said, I want to get the exact quote because I love this quote so much. It's my favorite quote. Let me see if I can find it. So anyways, concerning God and religion, 'tis now thought more expedient to oblige Masons to that religion in which all men agree, leaving the particular opinions to themselves, that is, to be good men and true, or men of honor and honesty, by whatever denominations or persuasions they may be distinguished, whereby Masonry becomes the center of union and the means of conciliating true friendship among persons that must have remained at a perpetual distance. Right, so one more time, I'm going to read that again because I love it so much. 'Tis now thought more expedient to oblige them to that religion to which all men agree, leaving the particular opinions to themselves, that is, to be good men and true, or men of honor and honesty, by whatever denominations or persuasions they may be distinguished, whereby Masonry becomes the center of union and the means of conciliating true friendship among persons that must have remained at a perpetual distance. So, silence and violence, when you say, um, where is it? When you say studies have shown that people are happiest when living around people like themselves, I think what you're saying is you want men and women for that matter, but men to remain at a perpetual distance based on the denominations or persuasions which they may be distinguished. And I think Freemasonry, which is beautiful, is the belief that you can, in fact, have true friendship among these men and among these people, and not remain at a perpetual distance. Well, I think Freemasonry provides an agreed narrative. That agreed narrative is to be good men and true, or men of honor and honesty. To be a good man and true, or to be a man of honor and honesty. Somebody asked me what the belief of Freemasonry is. I think that might be as good a definition of Freemasonry as anything else. To be good men and true, or men of honor and honesty. Um, so CR7 King. So why do you need to join a secret cult like Masons? So Freemasonry is not secret, nor is it cult. It's not amazing. It's amazing to me. That's the thing I think you don't understand, CR7 King, right? My favorite is, well, silence and violence. I think that you and I just have a fundamental disagreement. I do not want to um, have a nation state based on a shared religion or a shared race. That I think would be terrible. I want to, if anything, have a religion, have anything, but including nation or state, based on a desire of people to be good and true and honest, and of honor, and that's it. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your religion is. And I think that universal tolerance is a lesson found within Freemasonry. Um, so, um, so again, Freemasonry, C7 or whatever your name is, CR7 King. Freemasonry is not amazing, but it is amazing to me. What makes it amazing is the relationship between the individual and the lodge. So, for example, um, my favorite song in the world is "Simple Man" by Leonard Skinner. I love that song. My second favorite song is "Prodigal" by Blacktop Mojo. Now, you may listen to the exact same song and think it's great, think it's terrible, think it's okay. Ultimately, the song doesn't change. What's amazing about the song is my relationship to it. You could say, why listen to Simple Man? Why not listen to another song? Well, because I like Simple Man. I love Simple Man, and that's good enough for me. When you say, um, why do you need to join a secret cult like the Masons to become a good man? You don't need to join the Masons to become a good man, just like you don't need to listen to Simple Man to listen to music. I joined and remained active in Freemasonry because I love it. That's it. You can become a good man through any number of avenues, any number of choices, any number of decisions. You can become a good man by dedicating yourself to martial arts. You can become a good man by dedicating yourself to team sports. You can become a good man by dedicating yourself to lifelong education. You can become a good man by dedicating yourself to uh, any number of different activities, going to church, becoming a Catholic. Like, there is no single route to becoming a good man. So, to answer your question, you don't need to join the Masons to become a good man. But you can join the Masons to become a good man. It's one of many paths to being a Freemason, to being a good man. It just so happens to be the path that I love. Why do I love it? Why does anybody love anything? You don't choose what you love. What you love chooses you. Um, I love Catholicism. I'm not a Catholic myself, but I have no issue with Catholics. I know many Catholic Freemasons. The Catholic Church may have an official stance against Freemasonry. However, that's not the same thing as what Freemasonry thinks. I've known many Catholic Freemasons, no issues. So I'm not hiding our teachings. The problem is Freemasonry doesn't have teachings in the same way that you think of them. Here's the difference, CR7 King. Well, I mean, I've known Catholics. They're great dudes, no issues with them. Catholic Church can have whatever views it wants to on Freemasonry, doesn't affect me. So when you say teachings, CR7, all right, silence and violence. No talking shit about people on the stream. Same thing, political and theological study. Talk shit to me. I'm right here. Don't talk about people on stream. Say I'm ugly. That's what everybody always says, anyways. Or say I'm a wannabe tough guy. So, and nobody's pathetic either. All right. Where was I? The family recipe. But the other thing is, I wouldn't use the term teachings to describe Freemasonry. We don't have teachings in that sense. A religion, Judaism, Christianity, Muslim faith, they have teachings because they have a book, a scripture, documents, whatever it might be. It could be a totem if it's, let's say, more of like a spiritual practice. And they have these things. And then you have a priest, a rabbi, an imam. Rabbi actually literally means teacher, who will teach you the correct interpretation and the correct understanding of the Quran, right? Or the Torah, or the whatever it is. Freemasonry, everybody gets to come to their own conclusions about what being a Freemason means and what it teaches them. One of my favorite things to do is after a Masonic degree, go up to the brother, maybe he's an entered apprentice, and ask him, what do you think of, like, what did you take from that degree? What did you take from that lesson? And everybody who gives a different answer, they're all correct. Whereas you couldn't do that with the Bible. With the Bible, a priest is going to come to you and say, this is the correct way to interpret this book. Well, we don't hide it. I'm here talking about it right now, right? I'm here talking about Freemasonry right now. Now, again, so for example, you could argue, like, being a football player, it doesn't have teachings in the sense of a religion, but it does illuminate philosophies for you. If you're a football player, you're going to learn to appreciate teamwork, dedication, physical fitness, practice, sportsmanship. I mean, you could argue those are the teachings of football. I'd say more it's philosophies that are illuminated. But I'm here talking about it, so I'm not hiding Freemasonry at all. I love talking about it. I talk about it Mondays through Fridays. I'm doing a 24-hour content marathon on January 21st. We wear aprons. They're not tiny. And honestly, some Masonic lodges wear white gloves. I hated them. I never wanted to wear them. They're such a pain in the butt because I'm in a wheelchair. So whenever I'd have to wheel with those stupid things, you couldn't get any grip on them. So you'd always be like, it was just a nightmare. I hated those stupid things. Luckily, in the last few years, most lodges don't wear them. Like I've found in the last probably 10 years, I've maybe seen 2 lodges wearing them. It used to be just part of, it was considered like an upper crust thing. It was like fancy people wore gloves with tuxedos, but I hated those gloves. Tell us the latest ritual in detail. All right, so I don't hide Freemasonry, but I do keep the rituals private. And here is why I keep the rituals private. Oh, the lower ranks question. Thank you, Smokey. Um, so here's my reasons for keeping the rituals private. Even though, honestly, you can find a lot of them online. Now, a lot of what you find online is bullshit, and you need to keep that in mind. But you can, the problem is you're not going to know what's legit and what's baloney if you're not a Mason. Here's, though, why I keep the rituals private. There's three reasons. First, family recipe. If you had a family recipe that was passed down from your grandparents to your parents to you, pass it on to your kids, you're not going to share it on stream. Not because there's anything bad about the family recipe. You may even share like the final product with people. This is my family recipe for whatever it is for cookies. But you're not going to share the recipe because maintaining the recipe and the privacy of the recipe, it's a way to maintain the bonds of brotherhood between um, the past and future generations. The other two reasons is there is no single Masonic ritual, right? There's York Rite, there's emulation, there's Preston Webb, there's different jurisdictions. So if I share with you what happens within my Masonic rituals in Ontario, and you're in Texas and you join Freemasonry, you're not going to be present because you're going to be expecting things to happen that don't happen. And instead of focusing on the actual ritual, your expectations will get in the way. Happiness equals reality minus expectation. Um, and the third reason is if you are in Ontario and I share you the rituals, then it's a spoiler alert. Joining Freemasonry, there is a leap of faith. I'll talk about Freemasonry, its history, its involvement. There are some things I won't share. And it's up to you whether, based upon that and based upon me on stream, you decide you want to join or not. I mean, what I can say about the ritual is at no point in any Masonic ritual did I engage with anything that I would consider to be either against my civic, religious, personal, familial responsibilities or anything that was illegal or unsafe. So that's my reasons. And CR7 King, I never said Freemasonry is supposed to create better men. I've heard a million times the phrase Freemasonry makes good men better. I'm not a big fan of that term myself, or that statement myself. I would tend to use the term Freemasonry is about building a better world through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. We all have secrets, CR King. We all have secrets. Um, would you share on the stream your bank account information or your social insurance number? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Honestly, uh, they're pretty dull, to be honest, if you are referring to what I think you're referring to. Um, but that doesn't mean anything is unsafe or anything to that extent. But there is a level of trust, but I don't give specifics about what happens within Masonic rituals other than to say what I said. No point. And I went through my first, second, and third degree, as well as 5 degrees in Scottish Rite, and I've seen dozens and dozens of Masonic degrees in dozens of different jurisdictions. Never have I seen anything that was unsafe or concerning or against anyone's civic, religious, or familial responsibilities, or work responsibilities, for that matter. Um, Faux sharp objects. That's one way to put it. Although with that, what I'd say is don't trust every video. I've seen some videos that are full of baloney, so you need to keep that in mind as well. Again, clandestine lodges, it's an issue. I have no issue with people starting their own group just for fun. Um, what is a sushi knife? I have no idea to what you're referring there. But I've never seen a sushi knife in any Masonic rituals. I have no issue with somebody starting a Masonic body in their garage just for fun, so long as they're being honest about what it is and isn't, and not telling people it represents Freemasonry as a whole. I did plan earlier today to talk about Martin Luther King because it is Martin Luther King Day in the United States. Martin Luther King was not himself a Freemason, but his father and grandfathers were, as was, I believe, I thought, but I might be wrong, but I thought his father-in-law was a Freemason as well. Um, Maybe. I've seen some videos that are full of baloney too. I mean, I heard about one that was recorded in Arizona, but I've not watched it. I've purposely not watched it because I don't want to, you know, every view a video gets, the algorithm assumes it's more popular and then refers to another video. So I try not to see, or refers it to more people. I don't want to give it any more air than I have to. There may or may not be sharp objects within a ritual. That's what I'm going to say. Maybe it is a butter knife. Who knows? Um, oh no, there's some real stuff as well. I'm not going to say it's all not true. What I'm going to say is I've seen videos that are full of baloney. I've heard of videos that are true. The point is, I've also seen AI videos about Freemasonry, a lot of them coming out. The point is, if you're not a Freemason, you're not going to know which is which. So you need to be really careful about that. But I do try not to watch too many of these videos because, again, I don't want the algorithm to goose it and think that it's worth sharing, whether it's real or not real. Um, so, most worshipful brother Cameron M. Bailey wrote this today about Martin Luther King Day. Um, well, there are plenty of books written about Freemasonry. I mean, most positive, some negative, some fictional. Like, but when I say fictional, I mean um, fictional as in uh, like not like posit like the Lost Symbol by Dan Brown, right? It's a fictional book, but it doesn't portray Freemasons in a particularly negative light. So yeah, there's a lot of different books written about it. But a lot of people have no idea what. Again, a lot of people join clandestine lodges and wrote about that. You need to be really careful with that. So, in this time of great divisions within our society, Freemasonry stands as an example for humankind. We do not allow artificial divisions to separate us. Politics, religion, and the conflicts they can engender are rightly left outside the lodge so that all men of goodwill can come together in unity. We stand for reason, truth, and civil discourse, tools that we can use to improve ourselves and in doing so improve the lives of everyone around us. Faith, hope, and charity, brotherly love, relief, and truth. Liberty, equality, and fraternity, these are our watchwords, our guiding principles. We might often fail to live up to our loftiest ideals, but we can never give up on striving towards them. Only through that striving, that effort towards becoming better men, can Masonry find meaning within our lives. On this Martin Luther King Day, in acknowledgement of all the hate and anger currently boiling in our society, his words, his admonitions are vitally important. I close this brief message with a quote from his 1963 speech entitled I Have a Dream. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. It is right and good and important that we stand for what we believe in, that we endeavor to communicate the truth as we understand it, that we speak out against injustice when we see it. But while doing so, we can't forget Dr. King's call for dignity and discipline. As he so rightly said, we must not allow our protests to degenerate into violence. Thank you for reading, Most Worshipful Brother Cameron M. Bailey, past Grand Master, F&AM of Washington. MLK was a human being, which means he had good qualities and bad qualities. But I think his good qualities outweighed his bad qualities. This is from the Atlanta History Center, Centennial, celebrating from 1926 to 2026. Bonded by Brotherhood, Martin Luther King Jr., and Freemasonry. On Sunday, April 1st, 2000, About 1,200 people came together to attend the Millennium Sunday Convocation at Morehouse College. The event celebrated the Atlanta Civil Rights Movement and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his legacy. It culminated in the dedication and unveiling of a plaque that has the full text of King's I Have a Dream speech. King's widow, Coretta Scott, and his son, Martin Luther King III, were in attendance, as were about 200 Freemasons dressed in full Masonic regalia. After the event, a rumor circulated that Most Worshipful Prince Hall, Grand Lodge of Georgia, Grand Master Benjamin Barksdale, who had given remarks during the event, had made Dr. King a Mason at sight at the ceremony. A Mason at sight is a non-Freemason raised to the degree of Master Mason through the authority of a Grand Master. The news of King's alleged appointment to Master Mason after death caused controversy in the Masonic world, primarily because a dead person is not able to exercise one of the primary tenets of Freemasonry, which is joining of one's own free will. Yes, Tomb, I got a big forehead. Please hit like and subscribe. To become a Freemason, aspirants typically must go through the process by which they attain the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry. First, the candidates are initiated and are known as entered apprentices. During this stage, they learn some of the secrets of Freemasonry, and upon completion are entitled to be called brother. After apprenticeship, they attend to the next degree, which is called fellowcraft, and then a Master Mason. What's interesting, though, they talk about this idea of joining for one's own free will. That's really important to keep in mind, because one thing I've heard people say is you can be, a Mason at birth or a Mason through your bloodline. That would be anti-Masonic, right? Because if you're joining at birth, you have no choice, right? And that's not how Freemasonry works. To be a Freemason, you must join of your own free will and accord, and be of the legal age, at least 21 in Canada, in some places in the States, 18, other places 21, right? Though King was never made a Freemason, Ed Bowen, a 33rd degree Freemason and former legal advisor to the Prince Hall Masonic Temple on Auburn Avenue, believes it would have been a matter of time before Dr. King became one if he had lived. Bowen said joining a Masonic Lodge was a rite of passage for Black professionals. Most of the ministers on Auburn Avenue at that time were Masons. So were most of the prominent doctors and lawyers, he said. The Masonic Lodge is where you got stuff done. Freemasonry was also in Martin Luther King's family. King's father, Martin Luther King Sr., was a Freemason, and so was his grandfather, Reverend A.D. Williams. Many of King's closest associates, Andy Young, Julian Bond, Hosea Williams, John Lewis, were all Freemasons. In addition, the headquarters of King's civil rights organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, was located inside the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia on Auburn Avenue. According to Bowen, another thing that might have enticed King to join the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia and become a Freemason was the organization's commitment to civil rights from its inception. The organization's namesake, Prince Hall, was a free Black man who lived in colonial New England. He became a Freemason in 1775. When members of white lodges in Massachusetts wouldn't admit Hall and fellow Blacks as members, Hall and his compatriots started their own lodge in 1784 with the backings of Freemasons in England. Since that time, I am someone who wants you to like and subscribe. Since that time, the Prince Hall Freemasons have not only become the largest African-American fraternal organization, but also the country's oldest civil rights organization, with its members advocating for a host of civil rights, including the abolition of slavery, free education for children, and equal pay for equal work. According to Christopher Hodap, the author of Freemasons for Dummies, Neil, the Grand Master of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, had planned to initiate Dr. King when he returned from Memphis in April 1968. King traveled to the area to lend his support to black sanitation workers who were protesting unfair labor practices in the city. Barksdale attests to this arrangement to the reference that Grandmaster Dr. X. L. Neal stated that he will make Dr. King a Prince Hall Mason at site when he returns from Memphis. The above is true. I was a Grand Senior Warden when Grandmaster Neal made the statement, which was in the presence of the Grand Lodge member in Augusta, Georgia. Due to the assassin's bullet, King never made it back to Atlanta alive. He died in the emergency room on April 4th, 1968 at St. Joseph's Hospital in Memphis, an hour after being shot on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. After a private memorial service in Memphis, King's body was flown back to Atlanta with a private funeral service at Ebenezer Baptist Church. A public memorial followed the private funeral. King's casket was loaded onto a simple mule cart. The mules, Bella and Ada from Gee's Bend, Alabama, led the procession. Though King never became a full-fledged Mason, Bowen said he thinks King already embodied the spirit of Freemasonry. He always represented what was in the best character of man. That's not to say he was perfect, and I've heard some of the stories about some of his shortcomings, when you call it that. I tend to think, though, we all have our shortcomings. I have many shortcomings. I think that based on my knowledge, what he did, what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did for the world would make him, within the Masonic spirit of being a good man and true and honorable and worthy of certainly, if not emulation per se, appreciation and respect from Masonic brothers. Because, the I Have a Dream speech at the Lincoln Memorial was put up by Freemasons and Eastern Star. And I think it was well deserving to be put up by Freemasons and Eastern Star. Well, first, Elzac, I think the problem is you would never take me out for dinner the next day. You never call me back. So no, because I don't trust you. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Serene, if I had to pick a faith, I suppose Christianity, because it's the one I'm most familiar with. I grew up, right, in Canada, in Winnipeg. I remember going to church as a child. So Anglican, I suppose. Oh, powerful. I don't know I'm not a fan of the term powerful, because neither organization is powerful in the sense of political or, neither one is powerful in the sense of political or economically or socially or anything like that. But I would say it is, in terms of which one is more relevant to the world, I would say Freemasonry, because there's just been more Freemasons and it's been around for longer. So because it's been around for so much longer, I think it has to be Freemasonry, and because there's just been more Masons. So CR7 King, I gotta ask you a question. What is it that you find interesting about Freemasonry? Because it certainly has to be something, right? You're here on this stream, talking about Freemasonry with me, trying to bait me or get a rise. So what is it about Freemasonry that you find so fascinating? Because clearly it's something, right? You wouldn't be on here still talking about it if you didn't find it worth thinking about. So again, really want to reintegrate um, the importance of Freemasonry to Dr. Martin Luther King. Um, Rough looking bloke. I think I'm a handsome bloke, Joseph. Please hit like and subscribe. Um, So Bowen said joining a Masonic lodge was a rite of passage for black professionals. Most of the ministers on Auburn Avenue at that time were Masons. So were the most prominent doctors and lawyers, he said. The Masonic lodge was where you'd get stuff done. Freemasonry was also in Martin Luther King Jr.'s family. King's father, Martin Luther King Sr., was a Freemason, and so was his grandfather, Reverend A.D. Williams. Many of King's closest associates, Andy Young, Julian Bond, Hosea Williams, and John Lewis, were all Freemasons. In addition, the headquarters for King's civil rights organizations, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, was located inside the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia on Auburn Avenue. And then they talk about the Masonic history of Prince Hall as well. All right, CR7 King, I think you're leading a very not good life. I'm going to put you in a little bit of a timeout for a few moments. All right. Apparently Mormons have 500 billion assets. I mean, that sounds like baloney to me, Serene. This statement about the Mormon Church. I've not studied the Mormon Church. It just sounds highly, highly doubtful to me. But again, I don't think either the Mormon Church or Freemasonry are powerful in the way most think about it economically, politically, whatever it might be. That's not to say we're not relevant to the world, and we haven't been relevant to the world, but there's a difference than saying that or that the Freemasonry is powerful. So we're going to give it a bit more time. We're going to wait to see who joins. Please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to mark on your calendar January 21st, excuse me. January 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be having the 24-hour, Mormonism isn't a child of Freemasonry. I'm not a fan of that term. Joseph Smith was a Freemason, but Mormonism is its own group and its own organization, its own, I guess, religion. Not really a child of us, per se. I'm not a fan of that as a term. It's going to be a 24-hour content marathon. So I'm not going to be exclusively on a single stream, a single channel. I'm going to be traveling all around, getting, different channels, different venues. I will be leaving comments and posting where I will be at any given point, so you guys can find me, because I want to try to grow myself and grow this channel on multiple platforms, on multiple venues, not simply. I love this YouTube channel. It is absolutely kind of my baby, and it's where I started, but I want to try to grow outside of a single venue, a single channel, which, by the way, diversification is important for Freemasonry as well. Whoa, silence and violence. That's some baloney right there. We have had approximately 33% of Coach Darts, hit like and subscribe, of either 14 or 15 presidents have been Freemasons out of 33. Or how many presidents have there been altogether? How many presidents in total? 42? 43? 47. 45 individuals have been presidents. So we've got 15 of the 45 at most, which is 33%. You are not paying attention. So there's been 47 presidencies, 45 individuals. Skull and Bones are not brethren. Skull and Bones is a separate organization. Um, None of that is true, Coach Darts. You do not know what you are talking about. Whoa, Crank. I'm definitely not a fan of what I'm seeing there. Albert Pike was, again, he wrote a book. A lot of anti-Masons rely on the book for their understanding of Freemasonry, which you can't do. It represents one man's opinions on Freemasonry. Um, Sorry to get the math wrong, but nobody's more presidents than us, and the Mormons have zero. I mean, the Mormons may have zero. When you say than us, I mean, I guess it depends on how you define it. In terms of social groups, probably. That would probably be true. I can't think of any other group that has had more. But that's just one attribute, right? In terms of if you wanted to look at religious affiliations, most have been what, Protestant? Does that mean the Protestants are powerful? Right? You need to be really careful about how you define what powerful means. I'm not a big fan of that. Crank, you are probably leading a very, very bad life if you're going to say something like that. Not that it would make a difference, but Albert Pike wasn't Jewish. He was Christian, or, he had some Luciferian. I would define him as Luciferian. You could define him just as Christian, at least culturally. I think he was more Luciferian myself personally, but who am I to decide that? I am a Freemason who's been a Freemason for almost 20 years, who's attended over 1,000 Masonic events around the world, um, whether it be in the Philippines, Rio, Bogota, Colombia, South America, North America, Mexico. So I think I get to say. I mean, but religion, I mean, the typical Protestant is not going to feel like he has any particular religious power, nor will he. Right? I think we need to be really careful about defining power and who has power, who doesn't have power. It gets complicated, right? As a general rule, I think most organizations are actually less powerful than people think. And again, as someone who's been a Freemason and have heard the conspiracy theories of people saying Freemasons are powerful because George Washington was a Freemason or whatever it is. My point is always there's a lot of different qualities and qualifications, or not even qualifications, a lot of different qualities and attributes that define a person. You want to be very careful ascribing power, quote unquote, to them. Um, I don't talk about Masonic rituals, Crank. Um, I do not talk about Masonic rituals other than to say every ritual I've been through, and it's been a lot of them, I have never felt, or nor have they ever been unsafe, nor against my religious, civic, familial responsibilities. Um, Beyond that, it's a leap of faith. If you want to join Freemasonry, you got to be willing to go into something somewhat, with a bit of a leap of faith and trusting the brethren that you will be joining. Um, well, Crank, here's what I'll say to that. Again, I don't talk specifically about Masonic rituals or oaths. I used to be I worked in a legal aid clinic. I went to law school and I worked in a legal aid clinic for a few years. And I remember working once with this lady. I did a lot of landlord tenant work. And um, um, this lady was at risk of being evicted from her um, apartment. And the landlord was saying she didn't pay her rent. She was saying she paid her rent. So we're going to landlord tenant board. But anyways, in the middle of the interview, as I'm talking to her, she told me, if I'm lying, I will rip out my tongue. And may God strike me dead. Now, she didn't mean that she would literally rip out her tongue, nor did she mean, I don't think it's possible to do that, nor did she mean that she literally expected God to like send a lightning bolt and you know, send a lightning bolt down and kill her, right? She didn't mean it literally. Rather, she used that terminology as a way and the metaphor of, physically harming herself or physical harm as a way to undercut the importance that she took what she was saying and the importance of telling the truth. She wanted me to understand that she was, 100% telling the truth as to what she said, and the way that she expressed that was with that statement, right? Um, and so when it comes to Masonic oaths, you need to understand they're metaphorical, not literal. Whatever is involved in a Masonic oath, at no point have I ever been afraid for my safety. I'm not afraid for my safety doing this stream, blah, blah, blah. The rituals have been put out in the world dozens of times at this point. It's meant to demonstrate the importance of what you're saying. It's not to be taken literally. Sometimes, Crank, you need to understand the difference between metaphor and literal. So, do I believe in white privilege? Uh, so, white privilege, I tend to be more sympathetic to that idea, right? As somebody who is, white myself, my dad's from England, my mom's from Canada. I definitely think I've received certain privileges due to my skin color. I'm not afraid to admit that. The difference is I'm not a fan of the term power, right? Because I think when somebody talked about who's more powerful, Masons or Mormons, and then somebody else brought in other religions. I even brought up the religions in terms of, like, let's say Protestants, Catholics. I don't like the term power. I don't mind using the term privilege in some context. I think there's a value to that. I don't think Masons or Mormons have particular privilege in society. I think some religions definitely have had privileged positions in society. For example, there's been many times where anti-Semitism, including right now, scarily, has become more and more prevalent, or discrimination against Muslim people. So I'd say other types of religions are more privileged. I don't like the term power, though, because I think power, it brings in too many dynamics I'm not comfortable with. I would use the term privilege, if that makes any sense. Um, yeah, Bartholomew, we got some people on the stream. Um, I don't know if privilege always equals power. Like, I'm not a fan of that. I know sometimes they do. I prefer to separate the two, right? At least in my own thinking, because again, I think power. There's too many different. Power comes with too many different connotations, and I think it can push people away as well from recognizing they have some privileges, because it's not. I don't think it's the same thing. Um, well, that may be what leftists use. I'm not. I mean, this isn't a political channel. Freemasonry is not political. We have many different Masons with many different Masonic beliefs, both left, right, center, liberal, conservative. All I can say is when I use the term privilege, I'm not using the term power. I never said I was a leftist. Some people might think I'm a leftist. Some people may um, think I'm conservative, liberal. Who knows? People can think whatever they want to think about me. All I can speak is for myself exclusively. Minotaur, I'm doing well. They do make extra thick tooth floss for me. Please hit like and subscribe. I'm a human. Exactly. I am a human. Can you give me an example of privilege that is absent from of a power differential? Um, sure. When I, uh, you know, I have no legs, but I'm privileged to be born in Canada in 1983 and to have, because, for example, there are elevators, there's elevators in most buildings, there's ramps, whatever it might be. But if I was, let's say, born in a country or let's say I was born in a community that's smaller, where most of the buildings are not wheelchair accessible, where most of the buildings don't have elevators, that's an example of, I'm privileged because I have certain access to whatever it is to get into buildings. That's somebody who's born missing their legs, but let's say their town, it doesn't have a lot of accessibility, then they don't have that privilege. So there you go, right? I wouldn't describe myself as being like more powerful because the buildings have accessibility, but I would consider myself privileged. I consider myself very lucky. I would say I'm also privileged just to be born in 1983 at a time when we have advancements in technology, medicine, these computers, right? I'm in a privileged position. Most of human history, I could not be doing what I'm doing here. I could not have this privilege. So there's that as well. I was privileged with the parents that I have to take care of me, to be good, to treat me well. A lot of people don't get that privilege. A lot of people are born to parents who are maybe not so great, who abuse them, whatever it might be. So, well, I'm not trying to arrest anybody, but okay, I was a probation officer once. Um, I wouldn't use power. Power, in my opinion, means ability to exert control over others. That's not power, right? Necessarily. So my ability to, my ability to do more in the world because I'm privileged to do so, it does not mean I can exert that privilege over other people. It's not like me getting in the elevator, I'm now in a powerful position as compared to everybody else in the elevator, or even somebody in another community who doesn't have access to that elevator. And that's where I push back against power. Because look, I consider myself absolutely privileged to be a Freemason, right? Like 100%, I consider myself privileged. Well, I would say the disabled community and the non-disabled community, um, we exerted pressure. I like not power. Again, I think this is coming down to a little bit of a semantics question, though I enjoy semantics. I think they're important. Like, if I go to somebody and I say to them, I was born missing my legs. I need you to put an elevator in this building. Um, they may say yes, they may say no. But if they say, yes, because they make an argument on moral grounds or on ethical grounds, it's unethical for you to not have an elevator here. It's unethical for you to not have a ramp. Is that me exerting my power over them, or is that me making an ethical argument and them deciding to comply? Or you can make an economic argument if it's a business. I have money to spend here, but I can't get into the building. Maybe they bow down to economic needs, right? Or maybe they do bow down to political pressure if they say they refuse to, and I then lobby the government to make rules and regulations. At a certain point, you could argue I'm trying to influence the government to exert its power, but I'm still making an ethical argument to the government. Um, but again, I consider myself privileged to be Freemasonry. I don't consider myself to be in a situation of power to be a Freemason. I've never felt because I'm a Freemason, I have any power over anyone else, nor do I want any power over anyone else. But I do consider myself privileged. I consider myself privileged to know the people I know, to the brothers I have, to be able to travel. Recently, here's a good example of the difference maybe between privilege and power. I was in Cambodia, in Bogota, Colombia. I flew to Chicago, and then I was taking a bus from Chicago back home to Windsor. But I had a 10-hour bus ride, um, or I had a 10-hour wait from when I arrived back in Chicago to, um, I had a 10-hour wait from when I arrived in the airport in Chicago to um, catching my bus. And at first, I was going to just spend the 10 hours in the airport. The problem is, I was very hungry, and airports are expensive as heck, right? But then I realized, hold on, I know some Masons here in this city. I know one of them is having a special event. So I took a city bus from the airport to the Glenview Masonic Temple, walked or rolled right in the front door. I knew how to use the elevator. I went down and I met my brothers. I hung out. They had a ton of food. It was an insane amount of food. I got to eat for free, hang out with them, chill. It was freezing outside. It was warm inside. That's a privilege. That's a privilege I get because I'm a Freemason. Um, that's not a power I have. That's a privilege, right? Here's what I'll say. Sometimes a privilege can equate to power, but I think more often than not it doesn't. And I think within Freemasonry, very often non-Masons equate one's privilege with power. And I think that that's unfortunate because it's not the case, right? I would not consider myself to have any power because I was able to um, visit my Masonic brothers and get a free meal and get to know them. But I would consider that a privilege. It's not power, it's a privilege, right? I consider myself privileged to be a Freemason. I don't consider my Freemasonry to give me power over anyone. And even the economic argument, I don't consider that is inherently power, right? If I go to somebody, if I go to a business owner, right, and I say to them, um, I could be a customer here, but I can't access your building. I'm one person. Is that really going to make a huge difference on their bottom line economically? Maybe yes, maybe no. But what if they just respond to the ethical or moral argument without me needing to try to exert any power, just by saying to them, this is a value, right? So I'm not suggesting that there are no instances in which privilege cannot translate into power, but I do think privilege translates into power far less often than we think. And so that's why I have no issue, for example, admitting that there are examples of white privilege that exists within the world. That does not mean that every individual who is white, though, has quote unquote power. So I guess that's my answer. I hope that made sense. But yeah, so that's why when people say, are Freemasons powerful? Um, uh, when people say, are Freemasons powerful? I say, no, I do consider myself very privileged to be a Freemason, but that does not mean I equate that privilege with any power, because Freemasons really don't have any power. We don't have any economic power. We don't have any political power, social power, but we are, and I do believe I am privileged to be a Freemason. Well, CR, it is my channel. I can time out whomever I so choose or not choose. I suspect, CR7 King, you are leading a very bad life. Again, I don't think Jewish people have any power. In my experience, Jewish people are people like anybody else. Some individuals may have power, but that's whatever individual circumstances brought them there. That is not because they are powerful. I mean, that's you seem like a very not good human being, CR. Um, Seven King, you seem like not a good person. My suspicion is you are leading a very bad life in which you are using things like racism, apparently, to ignore whatever problems are existing within your life. Um, there are Jewish people in Freemasonry. There are also Christian people within Freemasonry. There's also Muslim, Hindu, Sikh. I would say Jewish people within Freemasonry, within, well, I mean, it depends what the kind of the makeup of the community is. So, like, if you are in a community which has a higher Jewish population, you'll have more Jewish Freemasons. Um, well, Ryan, hit the like and subscribe button. So when you say which, I mean, Freemasonry, again, we don't discriminate because we're better than CR7 King. We don't discriminate based on one's religious beliefs. We have Jewish Masons, Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, Christian, both Catholic and otherwise. Um, well, I'm a member of 5 Masonic lodges, CR7 King. You're going to need to be more specific. I'm a member of 5 Masonic lodges and proud of it. I am not an atheist. To be a Freemason, you must believe in a supreme being. I would not describe myself as following any particular religious or religions per se. I'm not Christian, Jewish. I wouldn't describe myself that way, but I do believe in a supreme being. Um, each one. So you know all 5 of my Masonic lodges have Jewish members, huh? All right. If that's what you think, good for you. So Jahibi, Jabibi? I don't know what that means. I'm gonna call you Ja. Uh, Freemasonry. I don't think you need religion to necessarily get morals. I would not describe myself as religious. I still have morals. Um, yes. Thank you. I like my coffee cup as well. I mean, this is good practice though, because I'm going to be doing my 24-hour content marathon starting January 21st at 2 p.m. So I need to get used to dealing with this stuff. But why is relative bad? Um, I take my coffee black, your ma'am. So, Ja, we know that to take this argument, we know that time is relative, right? If you follow these guys here, or this equation here, we know that time is relative. However, that doesn't stop us from being able to know the time within our reference frame, and that doesn't stop us from being able to make calculations and determinations which allow us in different reference frames to still understand the time. And if we can do that, just because time is relative doesn't mean it is not also rational. I think morality can be the same way. Morality can be relative, but also rational. And if morality is rational, it can give us a foundation on which to base ourselves and which to base our actions. I did not sacrifice my legs to the Masons. Donnie, Gusta, Machia, please hit like and subscribe. I don't know who came up with that stupid rumor, but if you believe that, you're a stupid person. Um, well, no. See, but just because morality is relative, it wouldn't mean logically you can do anything, right? In the same way, just because time is relative, I can't say to you, it's 3 minutes after fish o'clock, right? Or I can say it's 3:19 or 3:25. No, it's 3:20, right? I still have a rational basis. And even if I say, okay, my dad lives in a different time zone, I can't just come up with any time that he's experiencing. He's experiencing a specific time based on his clock, right? The idea that morality is relative, therefore anything goes, would be like saying time is relative, therefore any time is accurate. No, not any time is accurate. Just like not any moral choice it represents morality, right? Again, I go back to Newton. Famously, Sir Isaac Newton, when he was first developing his theories, said of time, it's so obvious as to what time is, I don't even need to describe it. It wasn't until Albert Einstein came along and said, no, actually, it's relative. I think we're kind of the same way with morals sometimes. We all just have this assumption that morality is so obvious, we need not, even think about it. It can be relative, but still rational. Um, um, you're talking about logical absurdities that are physically impossible. I don't know what you mean by that, silence. No, I think it's a very honest. I mean, so my view has always been, in the same way time is relative yet rational, morality is relative but rational as well, which means it is possible to have relativistic morality. However, within that context, it does not mean any moral choice is rational. So, for example, if you were to come up to me and say the time is um, three fishes after seven apple seeds, my response would be that's not rational. And if you were to say, well, but time is relative, so my time can be whatever I want it to be, I would say no, that's still not a rational statement that you've made. In the same way, if somebody were to come up to me and punch me in the face and say, my morality is relative, therefore it's okay to punch you in the face, my response would be, that's not a rational statement. Whether your morality is relative or not, you still acted, irrationally. Your morality can't be anything because it's relative. Um, um, well, no, because again, within the idea of time being relative, which we know it is, right? Um, again, it's possible to measure time in a million different ways. There's no reason why, in theory, you couldn't measure time using apple seeds and maybe how long it takes an apple seed to grow into a tree. But the problem is that wouldn't be a rational way to measure time in any meaningful way, right? Certainly not when talking to me. When I'm talking to somebody who's in my apartment, let's say, the rational way to determine the time is to look at the clock, right? That's the rational way to do it. In the same way, the rational moral decision to make is that we both don't punch each other in the face, right? It's possible to determine morality based on a reference frame, and based on that reference frame to apply rational decisions. Same reason why it's a rational decision for me not to use substances because it will not result in a better outcome for me or the people around me. If I end up in the hospital, now we're in a different reference frame. Maybe they need to give me some substances for pain management. Who knows? But you need to keep that in mind. Yeah, well, that is always my law. People have asked me what my supreme being is. My supreme being is the rational nature of the universe as understood through geometry and science. Um, right? That's always been my belief in a supreme being. So it does make sense to me that I would appeal to a rational universe or rationality. I think part of being moral is recognizing the rational nature of the universe. If the universe was irrational, which meant there was no relationship between cause and effect, then you could not, by definition, be moral because you could not adequately judge the outcome of your actions, right? At any given point, if, today I wheel out of my apartment and just the action of leaving my apartment kills 5 million people in China, and tomorrow wheeling out of my apartment the moon turns to cheese. Like if everything was irrational, you would not have a moral foundation on which to base yourself. Rationality, the ability to understand the consequences of our actions, is what allows us to be moral. What's going on underground? Well, the architect, I think you're referring to the idea of the great architect of the universe. That's not a single, that's a placeholder name. It's like supreme being. The great architect of the universe. If you're a Christian Freemason, the great architect is going to be, I guess, would be Jesus. If you're Muslim, it'd be the Muslim faith, the Jewish faith. If you're indigenous, maybe the creator or nature. It's not a specific being. Rather, every Mason, based on his or her religious beliefs, will impart, within the great architect of the universe, that idea. Right? So you need to keep that in mind. I believe in a rational morality, but rational morality is not objective, right? That's the point. Because a objective morality implies that there is a single being or entity that is looking, that is kind of judging us. It applies in the same way, previously before there was relativity in a scientific sense, you had to assume a prime observer, right? I am on the earth and the car is traveling 60 kilometers an hour past me. I'm the prime observer. In relativity, there is no prime observer. I observe the car going 60 kilometers past me. The car, if it doesn't know it's moving, will assume I am traveling at 60 kilometers an hour past it. Either observation is rational, and therefore either observation is correct. But it cannot observe me moving at 40 kilometers an hour. That would be irrational, right? So, hello, Fox. Thank you for being here. Well, rationality is not subjective. Rationality is, what's the word? But it's not objective either, because rationality allows for different interpretations of the same event, right? So I guess what I'd say is there are limits. If you want to call that objectivity, that's fine. Not every decision can be considered moral, just like not every calculation is accurate. You can get some calculations wrong. Again, the car traveling on the road, I can say that car is traveling 60 kilometers an hour, and that can be a rational, correct calculation. The car can look at me and make a calculation in which I'm traveling 60 kilometers an hour past it. That would also be rational. But neither one of us can calculate the car as going 40 kilometers an hour unless we get to a different reference frame. So there's a limit to what is acceptable. There's a limit to good and evil. Within Freemasonry, actually, one of our tools, the compasses, actually describe this. Not every calculation you can make is accurate, just like not every moral judgment you can make is accurate, but there is more than a single moral judgment that can be right. I guess that what I'm arguing for is objective truths with an S, not objective truth, right? Because there's more than one truth that works in that situation, right? And I think when it comes to objective, when people say relativism doesn't work, what they're saying is there's a single truth, and I don't believe in that. I think, and that's also true for religion. I think whether you are Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Sikh, indigenous, you can get to a rational moral belief based on different truths of what you believe. And I think, the Masonic compasses are a really good example of this in a metaphorical sense. You have things within the compasses and outside of the compasses, but it's not a single thing within the compass, right? There's a lot of different truths within that compass on which one can base one's morality. But if the multiple truths negate each other, at least one must be incorrect. Yeah, but you need to be incredibly Um, I'd be incredibly careful with the word negate because when it comes to, certainly, again, I'm not religious, but when it comes to, for example, um, like Muslims believe, if it's two people, each believing something that negates, but it's both supernatural, then I might have a tendency to not quickly use kind of the logical argument there, right? Because when it comes to, I mean, and I'm not a huge fan of him, but Jordan Peterson kind of talks about this. When you're trying to interpret religious texts, and let's say two religious texts are both discussing a supernatural event, but both offer contradictory or negative, negate one another. It's possible that maybe we just lack the understanding to read it in proper context. I don't know. I'm always hesitant about this argument of religions negating one another because religious interpretations seem to be incredibly complicated. Um, I don't, wow. CR, I got to tell you, I've talked about this before. So, by my rationale, the fewer wheelchair users, the better. I would need to know more what you mean by that. So, if you meant you want to um, develop some type, because I was born missing my legs, right? So if you are trying to develop robot legs, and everybody who is born missing their legs is given robot legs and doesn't need a wheelchair, can just run around with their robot legs, then maybe that would be a rational morality because who wouldn't want robot legs? Um, if your argument is you want to develop a cure for someone, so let's say when my parents went to the hospital, found out I was be born with no legs, you come along and say that we have this injection and your baby will grow legs, before they're born. It's like, okay, maybe that's irrational. If you're saying, we're going to run around and, you know, kill or unalive everybody who uses a wheelchair, I would say that's irrational for a few reasons. First, once you start to allow for the single statement of the fewer of X group, the better, based on something that they can't control, well, what's to stop you from extending that to the next level, the next level, the next level? You also lose out on all of the potential intelligence and wisdom. I'm not saying I'm wise per se, but all of the intelligence and wisdom and contributions that the wheelchair users can make to society. And you have to extend resources and energies to get rid of all of the wheelchair users. Um, well, nothing is, I mean, I would agree. I would like there to be zero of that particular group in society. Having said that, the rational question becomes again, how are you achieving this? Because if, for example, you decide we're not going to have a justice system anymore, every accusation, it's immediate. Like you need a justice system, you need courts of law, you need people to be found, guilty, you need jury selection. And also, the danger is how are you getting to that fewer number? If you are, for example, instituting the death penalty, there's the danger that an innocent person will be taken out by the state because it's very hard to trust the state to always get it right. Because I'm not saying anything even negative about politicians or governments. It's just people make mistakes. And you're taking a pretty huge risk that there's going to be a mistake. And if enough mistakes are made, that becomes a problem in and of itself. So again, I mean, the statement, it's more the complicated. What do you mean by that? Do you mean lifetime in jail? Are you talking about bringing back the death penalty? If you're talking about that, how are you making sure you know, it doesn't take out people who are innocent? Do you trust the government to make those decisions? Do you trust anybody to make those decisions? Well, I don't think we could ever guarantee, and even if we could guarantee 100%, because I don't believe 100% exists in society, right? I think we are always prone to making mistakes and getting things wrong. But even if we could 100% guess, I mean, there are some who would argue that that is a rational approach. I would say there are a lot of people who would say that in that case, the death penalty is fair. I'm one who I just don't believe in the death penalty for a few different reasons. However, what I'd say is neither one of these are necessarily irrational moral beliefs, in which case, that's why we have things like democracy. That's why we have things like we vote on the government to make its decision. I'm one who tends to believe more in rehabilitation. In the most serious cases, life in jail. But in this case, silence and violence, what I would say is you and I would both have to run for political office, each express our opinion on criminal justice and the best way to deal with it, and let the people vote to decide. Because at this case, I can at least respect there's a rational underpinning for what you're saying because of the harm it does to people, when they're victimized as children, who then have to go through life carrying that harm. And that harm can often lead to things like self-harm, substance abuse, etc., etc. However, if you were to say everybody of a particular race or ethnicity should not be part of society, then I would say that is an irrational moral statement. In the same way, when you said above, we don't want wheelchair users in society, that's irrational moral statement because for all the reasons I expressed. I don't know if I'm very questionable about the idea of psychology to like the idea of the ability for psychology or psychiatrist psychology to 100% guarantee or understand the future or predict the future behavior of people. Again, I'm one who, if there was some type of situation where you could know with 100% certainty that this person will continue to commit these offenses forever, then I would say I would support lifetime in jail, but I'm not a supporter of the death penalty. That's me personally, because once you open that door, it's very easy for you to keep opening it a little bit wider and a little bit wider and a little bit wider until eventually, you get somebody. It's the same reason why even if you have somebody on video committing a criminal offense, let's say committing a robbery, he should still have the right to a trial, and he should still have the right to plead not guilty. Because if you say, okay, in the case of video, we're not going to let him have a trial, we're just going to immediately convict him. Well, what's the difference between a video and 10 eyewitnesses? What's the difference between 10 eyewitnesses and 9 eyewitnesses, then 8, then 7, then 6? What's the point of having somebody, he didn't quite see it, but he almost saw it? It's very easy to let the door swing more and more open. So it's better to keep it shut all the way. So in my experience, I was a probation officer for 5 years. I worked in a jail for 5 years. I don't know if any group ever had 100% reoffense rate. Having said that, again, I'm not opposed to the theory of if you could somehow know, nobody can because we can't look into the future, but if you could at least had a sufficiently reasonable expectation, a lifetime in jail, I'm not opposed to that. And even in jail, if there's no group on which to prey upon, depending on your victim type or whatever it is, it's possible maybe to end up, depending on how you treat the jail, to make the best of the situation, to use it to get an education, to, try to help others I always talked about this when I worked in a jail. I worked in a jail for 5 years, and I always told guys coming in, whatever you are here for, treat me with respect, treat the people around you with respect, take whatever programs you can take that we offer, whether it be programs to help you with alcohol abuse, substance abuse, um, anger management, violence, sexual offending prevention programs, relapse prevention programs, whatever it is, take whatever you can, do whatever you can. Being in a jail sucks, obviously, but that doesn't mean that you can't do things within this context to try to make the situation as good as possible, even within a not so good situation. And if you do those things, I will, within my job, which is a rehab officer, work within the constructs of my job, to provide whatever assistance I can, right? I mean, there's so many different types of treatments, though, right? I mean, this is a very specific topic you're talking about, too. I worked with all types of people in custody, right? From everybody from, the worst of the worst to people who were shoplifting to anywhere in between. So, I mean, in that case, again, I'm not opposed to, in theory anyways, the idea of keeping people in custody for a very, very long time. But even within, I mean, this, in some ways, there's a weird Masonic idea behind this as well, which is this idea that wherever it is you find yourself, I mean, certainly as a Freemason, you should not be committing any crimes, period. But wherever you are in life, whatever situation you find yourself, even if you're in a place you don't want to be, you still have a responsibility to act in a manner that is good for society, good for those around you, and respectful, right? So, you could use this within Freemasonry if you find yourself having a crummy day and you just don't want to be out in the world. You don't want to be out, you don't want to be out in the world. You still, as a Freemason, can choose to be kind, polite, generous, respectful to the people around you. And if you've made mistakes, and let's say you find yourself in jail, you can still, while in custody, be respectful to the correctional officers, be respectful to the program staff. Try to take programs that you can to, to ensure that when you are released from custody, you can try to make amends for your mistakes and try to, make the world a better place. Creed, I want to hire someone for my new project. I wish you best of luck. Amateur views, I am not balding. Look at this hair. What are you talking about? By the way, amateur, have you started to hit the like and subscribe button? I think that would be the most important question. Well, I applied an objective moral choice, but you applied objective moral choice as well, right? And we disagreed, is the point. But they were both rational, right? Is my point. We disagreed because I, again, don't believe in the death penalty. That's my personal opinion. Even for the worst of the worst, define that as you will. I believe at, lifetime in jail, maybe. You believe in the death penalty, right? And so the point is, those are two different moral decisions, but they're both rational. And in that case, what we need to do is, at that point we have politics. We have a political system where you could run for government and I could run for government. One's pro death penalty, and we let the people decide. right? So I'd say that's subjective in that I'm saying that decision is ultimately more subjective than objective, how we view it. But um, they're both rational, right? Because I can understand, though I don't disagree with it. I can understand the like what Lan. I don't agree with it, but I can understand what Ian Wu 720 is saying. I just don't agree with it. Oh, yeah, I agree with that. But the reason I agree that that behavior is wrong is because it is not result in a rational outcome. I cannot imagine a world, I cannot imagine a society, I cannot imagine any type of outcome where, you know, it is better for that behavior. It has always been shown by every measurement, by every metric, that that behavior results in a worse society. And that's what we have to think about, right? There's no rational way to argue. I cannot think of a single rational argument as to like how anything is made better through those actions, right? It hurts the people, and not just, I mean, honestly, it hurts everybody. It hurts all of society, but certainly, primarily, it hurts the victim who ends up very often having. I mean, they can obviously, there are many people who've been victims of abuse and who've gone on to do great things and live incredible lives, and it's not a life sentence by any means in the sense of, you know, there are many people who have been victims of abuse and like I said have gone on to do incredible things, but certainly and absolutely substance abuse issues, um, depression, anxiety, PTSD. And not only is that harming the victim, but that ends up harming all of society as well, because that person is the victim now has to struggle with their own issues. You're basically, you know, you're harming all of society, right? I've always believed that when you harm an individual in a community, in a group, however it is, you don't simply harm that individual, you harm the whole community. Which is why in the criminal justice system, one of the things I like about the Western system is like if somebody beats me up or does whatever it is or harms me in any way, it's not me bringing them to court. I can bring them to court um, um, you know, it's not me bringing them to court. I can do so civilly. Rather, um, I guess what I would say is it's the government, it's the crown, it's the state. Because what they're saying in that moment is you hurt this person, you hurt this child, you hurt this whatever, this man, this woman. So as a consequence, you hurt everybody. And, you know, the crown, the state, we are going to prosecute you for that. Um, I guess if you want to say rationality is my objective, you can, which is fair. I think that's, again, we're kind of getting into semantics a little bit. So fair enough. I just think rational outcomes, objective is, I think, a singular outcome. Rational is more than one. If there is an objective truth, then when it comes to, let's say, the death penalty, one of us is correct, right? Period. Whereas if rationality is the objective, then we can both be correct so long as our opinions both make rational, logical sense. In which case, we are then left to rely on either force. One of us just takes power in the government and enforces whether there's going to be a death penalty or not, or a democratic process. And I prefer the democratic process. That's right, Mr. Keeps. You met all the trolls, or you missed all the trolls, I should say. Or unless you were listening, we had a whole bunch of trolls on for a little while, kept things fun and interesting. Don't forget, on the 21st, I'm going to have a 24-hour content marathon. So it's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be a single live stream for 24 hours. It's going to be a stream of we're going to be moving around a bit. So I'm going to do some on this channel, some on my personal YouTube channel, some on Twitch, some on X Spaces, some on, I may even try Discord for a bit because I want to start trying to grow across different channels. In the same way, I think Freemasonry needs to be diversified a little bit. I think Square and Compass Promotions needs to be diversified a little bit. Um, I disagree. Us wanting different punishments doesn't negate. Yes, I just started my voice channel on Discord, so I'm going to be trying that as well. We'll see how it goes. I guess I've never done it before, but I guess I'll be able to hear your voice. It'll be exciting. Well, thank you, Anne, for doing that. Um, the okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, I guess silence. I guess, like you said, I would just slightly disagree in that. Again, I think the difference is I. It's possible there are certain. Again, if you want to view it as the compasses and what's within the points, what's without the points, there are certain things that are obviously within the points of the compass, and how you get there in terms of what is allowable and what is okay, or outside the points of the compass, what is not allowable. You may get there through religious text, which is fine. You may get there through some other means. I get there through trying to think about things rationally. But I think the difference is I don't think you necessarily need a god or religious figure to recognize that something is right or wrong. I think you can do so through rationality. So, I mean, I believe in a supreme being. Don't get me wrong. I believe in a supreme being. However, even let's say, because the whole thing, the whole way this started, and it's fun, is because I enjoy these kind of discussions, is earlier in the stream, someone said they were an atheist, and someone said, how do you get your morals from? Even if you're an atheist, I think you can get your morals from a rational examination of the universe, and people. And if you can have a rational examination, you can get your morals just as well as if you were to get it from God, right? And I think the difference is a rational understanding of the universe allows for of multiple interpretations of the same event, right? Because again, the death penalty, that's a moral question, you could argue. There's two different ways to answer that question on a rational basis. Both are fine, so both are morally true. You're right. Other things, though, in the same way, I don't need a religious figure to say 2 + 2 = 4. 2 + 2 = 4 because it is the exclusive rational outcome to that question. Some questions are like 2 + 2 equals. Some questions are like, how fast is the car going? Or is the car moving at all? And that gets into reference frames and no prime observer. So I will show you the ring on January 21st. Fish, Ann Ogden, fish, 100%. Well, I can't do that, silence, because there is no reference frame in which that is possible, right? Because it is, and no reference frame is that rational. That's the point. It's just wrong in whatever frame, but that doesn't mean it's reliant upon a supreme being to set that morality. You can get there because in no frame will it result in a rationally good outcome. In the same way, I know time is relative, but I don't need, right? I know time is relative, but that doesn't mean that someone can observe the sun moving across the sky and say that sun is moving at a pace of 3 fish spawns to 7 apple seeds or something, right? Time is relative. That doesn't mean anything is observable or anything is possible. The relativity of time does not negate certain rational moral outcomes or certain rational moral judgments. So or moral calculations, right? Because that was the biggest thing when people were first, the reason why so many people couldn't imagine a universe in which time is relative, and there's probably some scientists who's going to get on here and be like, this is a whole bunch of nonsense, but I like this stuff nonetheless. To my understanding, the reason that a whole bunch of scientists took so long to understand that time is relative, even though it seems obvious, even if you look back at Newton, is because they could not imagine a world in which, in their mind, if time is relative, that means anybody can calculate any time at any point and it's correct. So I could say right now for me it's 3:56 or it's 10:20 or it's 2:20 or it's fish o'clock, and it's all the same because it's all relative and who knows what's real and what's not. But no, it's 3:56, right? There is, in my frame of reference right now, one rational outcome, and that is it's 3:56. And there's not an infinite number, right? Even for everybody watching this, right? Silence, there is one rational time for you to say it is. It would make no sense for you to say any other time. Um, and that's true for everybody on earth. There's not an infinite number of rational times. In this, the same way, there's not an infinite number of rational acts. Um, how do you explain societies going against objective morality at times? Well, because humans aren't always rational, right? I think, again, to bring it back to Freemasonry in an interesting point, I think human beings are, I think one thing that Freemasonry encourages us to be is rational. And I think that's one of the things I love about it, through an examination of things like geometry. But unfortunately, human beings aren't always irrational, aren't always rational. That's why I can say they act in an immoral way, even if you don't necessarily believe in a supreme being, which again, I do. But if you're an atheist, so let's say you don't believe in any supreme being. You say, well, then why is human sacrifice wrong? Well, human sacrifice is wrong because it is irrational in that there is no benefit to a society from sacrificing humans. All you do, even on the most, like, what's the word? Even with the most transactional approach to human life, if you want to put it that way, all you're doing is removing one more person from society that could contribute in the fields, working, whatever it might be. Also, once you start to allow for human sacrifice, what's to stop you from sacrificing more and more people, depleting your population more and more? It's that opening of the door a little bit, right? I cannot imagine a rational society. I cannot imagine a rational outcome in which human sacrifice results in a better world, right? It's why, like, why not have the purge? Well, for a lot of reasons. I cannot imagine any evidence or any rational calculation you could make where having a purge society results in a better society. I cannot imagine a rational outcome in which human sacrifice results in a stronger society. So we should not have human sacrifice. Now, look, people are irrational all the time. There are a lot of great things about the Aztec culture. I actually want to do a topic at some point on their incredible building practices, because supposedly it was either the Aztec or the Incas that found a way to bond stone together through, I guess, melting it with acid, which is a really cool subject. But you can do things good and not good, right? Like the Roman Empire. It did a lot of incredible things. I love classical history. The, killing people in the Colosseum was not a particularly rational thing to do. Well, silence, I got to agree with you on that one, because, well, there's a few. Solomon, honestly, Solomon, you might be the most rational because you're Solomon, named after King Solomon. Famously, he was supposedly known as very, very rational. Um, so I would disagree with that, silence and violence. I think throughout history, we've actually seen that countries and nations can actually do incredibly well with freely mixing groups of people. Maybe one of the greatest examples is ancient Rome, which famously, I mean, the ancient Roman motto was probably some version of, um, if you can't beat us, join us, right? They famously were, very free with granting citizenship, especially early on in its career, up through, in some ways, through the Republic, right? Julius Caesar famously brought in, all the different Gallic and Celtic people. Well, he destroyed a lot of them and killed a lot of them, but others he granted citizenship to, the Spaniards going into England. They also did a lot through conquest. I'm not going to try to whitewash their history in that sense. But the point is, there have been, times in history where we've demonstrated that it is absolutely possible to have different peoples with different backgrounds and different beliefs coming together for a common project and creating something pretty great, whether it be a nation or a group or an organization. Well, I mean, they demanded fealty, but they also, they allowed people to keep their own religious beliefs within the Roman Empire, famously. I mean, famously, with the exception of Christianity, which is a very interesting topic up until Constantine. I mean, they very often allowed people to maintain their own customs, practices, religion, so long as they paid their taxes. The Romans seemed to be pretty chill about what went on within the provinces. The owner is not a Mason, but I know the owner. He's a really cool dude. Um, well, he let them into the Roman Senate. There's a famous story about who was it? I forget who it was. I think it was Cicero talking about the Roman Senate under Julius Caesar's, reign was full of a bunch of Celtic and Gallic people with crazy haircuts. Well, the political structures, again, at the local level, I mean, really what they accepted, right, was taxation and military service, right? Basically, the two things that to be in the Roman Empire, in exchange for citizenship, that you had to accept was A, you're going to get taxed. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the people taxing you are not jerks and don't tax you too much. There's that famous letter from Trajan, I think it was Trajan, where he was talking to a tax collector and said, you're taking way too much money from these people. We appreciate it, but calm down a little bit. But you're accepting tax. You're also accepting the fact that if Rome goes to war, you're going to find yourself called up, at least your men are going to get called up to fight in the battles. But yeah, I mean, and then also you could be used as a political pawn, right? There's that famous story of Julius Caesar where Julius Caesar made a bunch of Gauls Roman citizens. One of them was captured by, I think it was Pompey or some Romans, and they basically flogged him and sent him, which you're not supposed to do to Roman citizens, and sent him back to Caesar as an FU. So, well, I would say they would, I mean, they would deny being irrational in the same way, um, like when I was working in the jail or in probation, one of my jobs, it felt like, was to try and, in some cases, they had this term, I can't remember what it's called, try and demonstrate to the people I was talking to the irrationality of their actions, right? Because one of the biggest challenges is some guy would not recognize that he was living in an irrational way. To him, he wasn't an alcoholic or he wasn't drinking too much. And you'd have to talk to him and not even tell him, but you would ask him questions like, how much money do you spend on alcohol, right, per week? And, if he says whatever, you say, that seems like a lot. But you just go on. Or, how do you feel when you wake up in the mornings? Usually, however it is he viewed it, I do believe it's rational. You would point out things and you'd be able to recognize outcomes and point out the irrationality of it. The Aztecs, I mean, people doing something will always at the time view it as rational, whether it be a society or an individual. That's always been the case. But I think it is possible to recognize, just like you can make a wrong calculation, right? You can be calculating the time in relativity and calculate it incorrectly based on your reference frame. Um, but that doesn't mean, there's an objective truth. It just means there's a different correct calculation. Um, I mean, it gets complicated. What I would say is, and this is true for a lot of places, very often what you see is when countries are newly forming, they tend to be very welcoming of all different groups until a dominant group arises, in which case they tend to start at that point becoming more, like famously, right? How did Romulus start ancient Rome? Well, I mean, again, this is mythological, how exact it is, but according to the story, as told by, I think it was Livy, he basically founded this city and then he opened the gates and said, anybody who wants to come to Rome, come. And who showed up? It was everybody who'd been kicked out of their own cities for, whatever reasons. So he got a whole bunch of criminals who got kicked out of their cities and countries around the world. There was no specific Roman identity. And then the Sabine women, the word I can't say on YouTube of the Sabine women. So that means Rome bonded with the Sabines. And then Rome borrowed a ton from the Etruscans. The Etruscans, in fact, ruled Rome for a little while. And then, there were times like they destroyed Carthage, but they also granted Roman citizenship to just hundreds of thousands of people. When you talk about why did Rome grow, I would say it was their willingness to both adapt themselves to other cultures and give other cultures a valuable reason to adapt to Rome. And there was a really cool symbiosis. Now, eventually, it fell apart, but what country, nation, empire hasn't fallen apart? Um, oh, yeah, the Etruscans were the ones who had the gladiator games and certain types of divinity. Well, I don't disagree with you, Silence, but I think you need to be really careful. What does it mean to hate, right? Because, for example, I'm, a believer in freedom of speech. So not all the time. I'm not like an absolutist on anything as a general rule, but so if somebody comes into the country and is an immigrant and let's say they start to protest against the government, not violently, but I don't like this government policy. Some people I feel like are defining that as hatred. I wouldn't define it as such. Um, well, Silence. I have known many people from Somalia, and actually one of my best friends for a while was from Somalia. He's Canadian, but he was a really cool dude. So not in my experience. In my experience, cops, I mean, some cops probably hate cop haters. I guess it'd be understandable. In my experience, the best cops don't hate anybody. Um, it's kind of like Masons. The best Masons don't hate anti-Masons. You can find anti-Masons annoying, but I try not to hate anybody. Well, this has been a very fun philosophical stream talking about philosophical subjects. Honestly, it may not seem to have a ton to do with Freemasonry, although we did talk about Martin Luther King Jr. and his Masonic connections, which was a ton. Father, grandfather, both Freemasons. A lot of his friends were Freemasons, and his headquarters was in a Masonic lodge. However, well, what I'd say is I've known many cops. They certainly find ACAB people, all cops are bad people, annoying and roll their eyes, but I've never seen them express hatred, just the annoyance that comes. What's up, KY? But these type of discussions, one of the cool things about Freemasonry is it does kind of help you become better at public speaking, better at expressing points and arguments. Because if I have an idea, like I want the Masonic Lodge to do this, I need to be good enough and capable enough to be able to argue why I want it to be able to do that in the Masonic Lodge. And then other people may argue against, and then we come to a final decision. But yeah, I guess, Mr. Keeps, if he's still there, he's called me this before. I think it's fairly accurate. I guess you could describe myself as a utilitarian in a lot of senses. right? But again, to be utilitarian, you have to first believe in a rational universe, because utilitarian is based on the idea that there can be a better or worse outcome. The only way to have a better or worse outcome is to be able to like rationally judge and gauge and make calculations. If there's no way to know the outcome of my actions, then utilitarians will be foolish and stupid. Um, I do not know what that even means. How would you argue for Taco Tuesday on the check? I don't know what any of that means. What is a taco? I know what checkerboard floor is. What is a Taco Tuesday? Well, that's not cool. Don't be violent. Don't be violent. Um, nice. I hope it was fun, KY. I love installations. We had a whole bunch of installations. They always tend to take place on Saturdays. I'm sorry, not on Saturdays, excuse me, in December and January, beginning of the year. So yeah, it I love installations. They're a really valuable and fun part of Freemasonry and a fun part of the Masonic. I really enjoy them quite a bit. So we'll see. But to me, I've always said the highest. I have not. I don't know what a Taco Tuesday is. I have. I love. I love all different parts of Freemasonry. I love different offices. Um, the but I've always said I think the highest degree within Freemasonry, to be honest, is actually the installing master, not the worshipful master. Well, I mean, I love tacos, so Taco Tuesday sounds great to me. I like Mexican food. My favorite type of food is seafood. So a few times I've visited Mexico and I love the seafood there. Well, nice. I mean, I love tacos, so I say hooray. I say I would argue for it. Are you kidding? If I was in a Masonic lodge and they asked me to argue against Taco Tuesday, I would say that's not rational. I cannot make a rational argument against eating tacos on Tuesday. I did visit the Mexican Masons. I loved it. I visited York Masonic Lodge on a few different occasions. I've actually been to both Puerto Vallarta and um, Nogales. Um, well, KY, you're from the South, so I don't blame you. I mean, Southern food is so delicious. I'm amazed when I go down to the South there aren't more fat people because your food is unbelievable. Your barbecue is so good, especially pulled pork. Oh, it's great. But ribs, barbecue in general in the South is unbelievably good. So I say good for you. You do that. I would do it. Cornbread, oh, unbelievable. Well, then I don't blame them. Good for them. I mean, if I lived in the South, oh my Lord, God help me. I would be. I mean, I'm already fat. I mean, people don't realize how big I am. I weighed 175 pounds at my highest, and I'm missing my legs. So, but it's not just you should be paying air tax. You should be liking and subscribing. Um, I mean, KY, but here's what I'll say. It's not just that you love, you actually know how to cook with it, right? Like, you know, if you don't know how to cook with any ingredient, including fat and sugar, it's not going to taste good. It's the fact you know how to cook with it. That's what makes it work. That's what makes it so great. Nice. One of the, so in theory, and would be either the oldest or the second oldest lodge in your area. Now, it's possible something got like renamed or something happened, but usually a number one is going to be pretty much as old as you can get. Um, well, I mean, I can imagine Mexico as well because Mexico has some pretty great food. But I would say if I had to pick, not to start any battles with anybody, if I had to pick the type of food, that is better, I'd pick American South. Got renamed from number 227. Okay. Well, I mean, military lodges were very common ways for Freemasonry to travel around the world, but that's cool. I If it got named number one, I wonder if maybe it was the first lodge formed and then it was part of a military base. All right, guys, but I got to run. I'm going to Essex Masonic Temple tonight. Thank you all for hanging out. It's been fun. I will see all of y'all very soon. I'll be back on 1 a.m. tonight briefly and then 1 p.m. tomorrow. Mr. Keeps, it was mailed today. Got the thing in from Scotland, so you should get it in, hopefully a few days. Oh, it's all right, too evil. Honestly, it's not too bad. When you're born missing your legs, you kind of learn and you grow with it. So honestly, it's not really a hardship, certainly not as compared to many different times in history. All right. We don't say that, silence. All right, but I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.